Thank you, and welcome to the October 21st, but it's not October 21st, is it? 19th. Yes, October 19th. So our agenda.
This one, that's for, yeah.
You know, I have to apologize. I left my reading glasses in the car, so until our first break, I may struggle here with reading. Yes, welcome to the October 19th regularly scheduled meeting for the Monterey Peninsula Airport District. It's 9:04 a.m. We will be joined remotely by Director Leffel. Everybody else is present. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Pick,
Present.
Director Sawney,
Present.
Director Leffel,
Here.
Director Sabo,
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here. Thank you. If you have a cell phone on, if you could either turn it off or put it on silent during these proceedings. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Lisa, can you help us with the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, that was a little rough. Mary Ann, you're delayed, so we had to catch up with you. Note to self, whenever we have someone remotely, they should lead the pledge. Okay. Let the minutes reflect. Okay. Communications and announcements. I see we have a new person at the table here.
We do, in fact.
Who's our district council today?
Oh, yes.
Are you standing in for Scott, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Are we done? Okay. I'd like to introduce to you the new controller on my staff. His name is Mark Wilson. Mark is with us for the first time. Been with us all of 7.
Mike, you're going to have to speak up, please.
Okay, can you hear me now?
If you keep it close and speak up.
Thank you. Mark has been with us all of 7 days and has already started to get his feet on the ground quite well. So I'd introduce Mark and let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here. By background, I am a CPA by background, and last about 20 years I've been a consulting CFO for a variety of companies. Have lived on the Peninsula since 1996, and coincidentally came here in 1996 to work for Jack Van Valkenburg at the Monterey Jet Center before it was built, actually. So pleased to be here, and happy to help as Mike directs me.
Well, welcome. How long did you work for the Jet Center?
I was there through the end of '99.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was there right at the beginning and through the construction, and my office there for a couple of years.
Very good.
Have you had previous government experience?
I have no previous government experience. It's all been private industry.
Okay, and when you were in the audit business, who did you work for?
I worked for Price Waterhouse in Los Angeles.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any other announcements?
None from staff.
Okay, and as Director Sabo noted, Dave Ritchie will be filling in for Scott, and thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Any board announcements? Hearing none, public comment. I don't know if we have any member of the, oh, we have one.
Yes.
Any member of the public can address us at this time for anything that's not on the agenda. When the item appears on the agenda, you'll be given an opportunity to talk. If you do want to talk about something, we only ask that it to be under our jurisdiction to do something about. Any member of the public wishing to talk, address the board at this time? Hearing none, I'll close public comment. Consent agenda, Mr. Lapierre.
The consent agenda is available for board action. There are a number of items on it, not the least of which are the minutes of previous meetings. There is a contract amendment for the executive director, which reflects what the board had previously discussed and approved regarding my evaluation. And then the resolution regarding what we're doing today, the Zoom, what we call the Zoom, right? Resolution that allows you to continue to operate under the Zoom environment for at least until the end of the year.
Sounds good. Any member of the board or the public or staff wish to pull an item from consent agenda?
I'd like to pull the second one, the Budget and Finance Committee meeting
Okay,
from October 11th.
sounds good.
And Mr. Huber answered my other questions I had.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consented.
I'll move approval of consent without item 2.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second roll call, please.
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Sani,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes.
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Deferred consent agenda. Lisa, since you wanted this pulled, you have any concerns or questions?
Yeah, there were a couple things that were noted in the meeting minutes and so the final report, I see that there's a $94,000 that's out there and that's going to be in the final report. Is that from the auditors? I just wanted clarification on that. Is that our annual report?
Can I, do
It's the
you want me to
second
take that?
Sure,
Carl?
presentation one, second paragraph essentially. On page
So I
2.
questioned we had a meeting with the auditors on the draft audit, which is what finance does. And I questioned if they had called out the $94,000 that Monterey is holding hostage over the tree trimming. And they said they had not. And I said I was afraid that that $94,000 would somehow slip through the cracks. And one day we'd wake up and find out we were too late to deal with it. So we asked that they put a note on the audit just to reflect that. That's what that $94,000 is.
Sounds good. Staff, do you have anything to add on that? Where do we stand legally on that? I know
We
Mr.
are-
Huber was working on it.
We are awaiting.
Carl, we can't discuss that because it's not on that's not the item.
Okay,
It's not for
I can give you an update after, Mr. Chair.
sounds good.
Lisa, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. It did. And so it will be reflected in the final report that they come out with then?
It'll be on their final audit that you'll see November or December, just so that we're clear that we're not losing track of it.
Yeah. Just,
I think it's going to be a footnote or it's going to be listed under pending litigation.
It is
Okay.
a special note.
special note.
Special note.
4. Yeah.
Okay. My other question is about the PR firm proposal. And there were notes, and we'll probably get into this. I know it's on our agenda as well. I'm curious, it said there were no suitable candidates. Did you find out how many candidates applied?
We're pulling that item, so it's going to come back
So-
in November. So there'll be a detailed staff report at that time.
We're pulling
We're pulling the,
agenda 2,
um,
this one?
Pulling the Chidlow thing?
yes, we are.
Okay. I was unaware of that. Okay.
I
okay.
forgot to announce it. That was a request from staff that we pull this. My mistake.
Okay, no problem. I'll leave the questions then. Thank you. I move that we go ahead and approve item 2 of the consent agenda.
Second.
Second,
Okay, we have a first by Director Sani, second by, we'll give it to Director Pick. And can we have a roll call, please?
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Sani,
Yes.
Director Leffel,
Yes,
Director Sabo,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Okay, regularly agenda items. Mr. Lapierre.
Item one is a presentation by Tom Schnetzer with Kimley Horn. This is a presentation, a version of the presentation that you saw several months ago, actually almost 2 years ago. And it's kind of preparatory. It's to get you back up to speed on the terminal sizing exercise that we went through in anticipation for Friday, when you'll be asked to interview the 2 finalists that we're proposing for architectural services on the terminal building. So I'll let Tom walk you through just to get you up to speed. And then he's got a tight time frame, so need to keep him moving. Perhaps at that point, we can excuse him and Chris and I can.
What does
answer
that mean?
questions.
Don't ask questions or what?
Yes, it does. No, no.
Well, we can ask him any specific questions we
course,
have of
yeah,
him and
Yeah,
then,
I say that in jest.
okay. Go ahead, Tom. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Miller, directors. Appreciate being with you this morning to talk about your safety enhancement plan and specifically the passenger terminal replacement element of that plan. So what Mike and Chris had asked me to do is just provide a just kind of a refresher on how you got to where you're at. You're really in an exciting actually, okay. It's Chris, did you just pull that up?
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can. Okay. All right, I'll just tell you when to flip to the next slide.
Okay.
Anyway, what I'm here to do is just kind of go back to what is this project? What is the origin of the project? How has the airport leadership moved it through some planning to refine it a little bit more? And then, you know, now you're at the point of hiring an architect to begin designing it. And so I think part of this discussion is to give you the same understanding that these architects should have, which was in the request for qualifications, which described very well this is what the project is. So it's just a bit of a refresher on that. So go to the next slide. Backing up to the master plan that was approved in 2019, there are a series of items that are really important to that, but it really comes down to the separation between the runway and the taxiway alpha, and the inadequate spacing that you have, given the existing terminal and the emerging commercial aircraft fleet. So, Chris, do you have that on a PowerPoint? Because I have it animated, or do you have just a PDF of it?
I'm not, Denise is doing this.
Denise, can you let him share his?
Okay, it might be easier if I just share screen myself and then I can run it, and I can also use my I'll use my pointer.
Go ahead and share your screen, Tom.
All right, let me know when you see it. Are we up?
No,
No.
Not yet.
not yet.
Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag.
You should be able to share.
Still nothing.
No,
All right, let me try this again. We're going to end this slideshow. Move it to a different screen.
Tom, would you like her to bring it up as a power? There it comes.
There you go.
It's coming.
Okay. All right. We got there. All right, now let me mouse over. So the projects, again, the major issue that started this was the separation between the runway and the taxiway. And a number of enabling projects need to happen in order to make room for a new terminal project, relocating terminals to the, or I'm sorry, hangars, aircraft storage hangars to the other side, relocating your aircraft rescue and firefighting facility to the other side. And then finally, the terminal building itself, relocating it to a new site.
I have a question. Can I ask it?
Yep.
Sure.
Let's go back to that slide. I'm well aware, as my fellow board members, of the runways separation there from the taxiway. We've done a lot of work on taxiway Alpha, and now has the work that we've done to date cured that problem with the FAA, or are we still operating under the waiver?
We are still operating under the waiver.
So all of the work we've done did nothing for that.
The work
It
that
was
we,
not intended to do anything for that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It was not intended to do anything for that. The work it's not working.
Director, if I could just speak to it. So the work we did on the infields on the west end was upgraded to meet the standard in that section. So there is a small portion that we've already rectified the issue with, just down at the far west end of the runway. That's the only place so far to date we've been able to increase that separation standard. There is still the area from in front of Del Monte up to in front of the ARF facility that is not taken care of yet.
Okay, and that we're operating under a waiver from the FAA, that 1972, 74 era thing. And have they raised any serious concerns since about that recently?
Well, they've not raised concerns because this program is on the books and they've already evaluated.
I understand.
it in their EA.
Have
So
they
they're
raised any
assuming
concerns?
moving forward, they are assuming we're moving forward with the safety enhancement program. So no, they have not raised any
Okay,
concerns.
thank
because
you.
That's their assumption.
That's the end of my question. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so the master plan in true form for a long range plan was looking at this program as being the building, which is I would call that the capstone project in this overall safety enhancement plan, at about 100,000 square feet, and that was really rough rule of thumb. We went through a program evaluation that we had presented to this board January of 21 that basically showed that right sizing this is more in the 60 to 70,000 square foot range. And we are using International Air Transportation Association standards. These are standards that US airports are tied to through our involvement with United Nations. That's our vehicle to basically adopt these standards. These are the same standards that every North American airport uses as well. So when it comes to sizing certain facilities, this is one of our fallback positions, is we're looking at optimum utilization, which means that your over design is what a lot of times is referred to as designing a church for Easter Sunday or for Christmas Day. You generally can expect you'll have bigger crowds and it'll be more, it won't be perfectly sized for those few days a year. Optimum is it's sort of a middle of the road. It previously was referred to as like a level of service C, which is acceptable. And it means that you might have some moments where things are a little crowded, but it's considered that optimum place where your investment is rationalized. And I don't know any airport in the US that has used over design. That standard, I know that the Changi Airport in Singapore did, but they had an unlimited checkbook. So the planning that you've done is right in line with other US airports. In terms of other industry guidance, the FAA's advisory circular on terminal planning, which is fairly fresh, was used as a reference. We also used, and this is something that evolves over the years, the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, their security screening rules evolve over time, and we do have the latest thinking from their perspectives. And then finally, there are certain parts of the building that have to do with fire code and the number of people you can have inside a building. So we did check a lot of these standards against your local building code. So that's just a quick sense of the types of guidance we use to get this program nailed down. Now, this slide is showing the starting point. So we plan for a terminal based on what we call a design day. And that is, and again, this is pretty standard in the industry. We're using a busy month, what's called a peak month, and but an average day in that month. And here is a schedule of every flight that would happen in that day. And we look at the groupings of flights. For example, you know this based on living there, your morning push is very heavy. You're a spoke airport feeding other hubs, and that's very common. And then you have another push here in the afternoon or at a midday, and then another one later in the afternoon. So this is just some of the basic information that we use to start determining the size of the terminal. This program, which was put in the request for proposals, request for qualifications for the architects, that's your space program that was produced last year, and it was based on what we are referring to as a modest growth, which is consistent with the master plan, which means it's consistent, it's in line with the forecast that you have that's approved by the FAA. I say that because you will be relying on FAA funding for a pretty good chunk of your overall program. And so understanding and playing within their guidelines is important. So here's one area where you've done just that. We did look at an aggressive schedule. If Mike and his crew are more successful in landing additional routes, we did want to explore what that meant. And so I won't point out a bunch of things, but total square footage, you're at 68,000 right now. When this building is right-sized for the future, you actually can get away with about 62,000. With a more aggressive schedule, which is very hard to predict, that building size gets a little bit larger. One area that is really important to note, and that is the number of gates. You have 5 contact gates right now. Your replacement terminal building will be a 5 contact gate replacement. That is what is the requirement. That is also in line with the FAA's perspective on the fact that this is a safety project. They're putting a lot of their money behind it, more money than terminals normally get, by the way. And they're doing it because it's a safety project, but they're not going to build you an extra gate because you might land some new routes. The planning did look at if you can add another gate, which you can on the site. But the program and the architect that you're going to be hiring soon, this is the program that they're going to be designing.
Of course.
We have a question from Director Sabo.
Yes, sir.
This kind of looks familiar from when we did it before, but this has been a while and I've forgotten. What is at the top of this existing screen says DBO plus 10 with a date in there?
Yep.
Can you explain what are we talking about there?
Great question. Thanks for pulling that out. As some of you that have been board members for a long time know, and some of you are learning, there's a lot of acronyms in aviation. Date of beneficial occupancy, that is opening day of your terminal. The FAA in their Airport Improvement Program handbook specifically says that if you're going to accept FAA money, you have to design your building for what you need on opening day and 10 years forward. So you're basically building in some capacity to grow into so that the day you open, you're not at capacity. And that 10 years is fairly standard, but it's a requirement for if you are going to be accepting FAA money.
So this is a plan for 2025 plus 10, is that correct?
Exactly. Yep.
And so in the model that you created here under modest, you're planning for 306,000 emplanements in 2025. Is that correct?
Sorry, it's very small. It's 396, so roughly 400,000 units. Yeah,
I did the best I could.
yeah, no, same here. I have to splint.
Director Miller, Ms. Leffel raised her hand.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that, Bill?
Yeah, thank you.
Director Leffel, we can't see you, but I understand your hand's up.
Yes, thank you. So a question I have, it looks to me in reading the terminal right sizing chart with the schedules that those are based on 76 passenger planes. And now we find that we're starting to move into the category of the 128. Does that make a significant difference with the size of the plane and the amount of passengers possible?
It absolutely does, Director Leffel. It definitely impacts a couple of things. Number one is the peaking. So for example, if you have 76 seat aircraft that are now being replaced with 90 seats, or even 110 seat aircraft like the Airbus 220, you have the airline may, and we've seen this happen in a few places, they may take 3 flights of a 76 seater and replace it with 2 flights of a 110 seater. So you're getting the same lift, but it's hitting your airport harder. You have more people coming off the plane at a time. And the design is based on, it's not based on an annual number in general. It's based on more of an operational perspective throughout the course of a day. You have parts of the day that are very busy, parts of the day that are kind of quiet, and that's what you design around. So when you have 110 people coming off of a plane, multiple planes, or in the morning boarding planes, and you're pushing them all through security, that is factored in. And we'll talk about the fleet evolution here in just a moment, and what your plan is capable of.
Okay, and does it also depend on the size, how the gates are, because the wingspan is bigger?
It does, yeah. And we've laid out the gate spacing so that it can accommodate a pretty wide range of aircraft types.
Okay. Then I have a question. When I was looking at this yesterday on the concessions, I'm going to go to the retail food and beverage. So it says now we have existing 6,060 square feet, and we're going to reduce that to 4,500. Now, we know our terminal is old and it is really not functional the way it's laid out, but when you did this, have you talked to our current concessionaire and say, how does it work? And is that the architect going to do that? I just think like 4,500, if that's going to be behind security and in front of security, that's not very much space.
So here was our perspective on it. And I think when you get into design with your architect, you're going to have much deeper conversations about specifically the kind of concessions that are in there. But we did assume a couple of things, and make a lot of assumptions when you put programs like this together. Your sit-down restaurant that you have now, Woody's, there is a strong desire on the part of the airport. You certainly heard it from your staff. We heard it from you, that having a destination type restaurant like that is important. And so that is baked into that number. Where we took some liberties in terms of other kinds of concessions, whether it's newsstand, gift shop, things like that, is that there is a trend where, and you may see this at other places. If you look at, if you've ever been through SFO Terminal 2, and you look at how the concessions are laid out, a lot of them they're woven into the movement areas. So basically instead of having concessions on the side of the building in a big hallway, there's more kiosks, which are smaller footprints, and people walk through them on their way to the gate. And what they have found is that the amount of revenue per square foot you get from those types of concessions, smaller ones, is greater than if you were to have the traditional boxes on the side of your terminal or concourse. So it was a concept. I mean, when you get into it and you start looking at how would a restaurant function practically? Right now, the restaurant you have is on the public side. I would think you'd probably start with that notion that it would be desirable to continue to have a restaurant on the public side. It's really a nice amenity. A lot of airports don't have that anymore. Everything is post security. But we kind of felt that that was a special amenity at Monterey that you probably are going to want to have in your new building. The size of it and what it looks like is yet to be determined. This could be something that could be on the roof. You know, your designers might get really creative and do something interesting, you know, with an observation deck, or it could be something that has a portion of it that's an exterior portion. So it wouldn't be part of your bricks and mortar square footage. So what we were trying to do after all of that I just said, we were trying to frame this program to something that was efficient. Now, could that 4,500 turn into 5,000 by the time your architect gets a hold of it and you have more dialogue about what exactly concessions do you want there? Yes, it could grow a little bit. And this program, this is it's a guideline, and some of the things are very firm, like your gate count. You're going to be building a 5-gate terminal. If you do anything other than that, the FAA may not be as supportive. But the details within there, you know, that's one area where you have some discretion.
Okay, so Tom, if I understood correctly, I kind of like our ARF, that the FAA will pay for basics in whatever frou-frou we want or extras we want, we pay.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, it's actually simpler than that. The FAA doesn't pay for anything that is revenue producing space. They don't pay for any concession square footage.
Okay, I meant that as frou-frou. That's what we want because we need extra money and want to serve our community.
Yep. Yeah.
And they don't care about that. They want to move airplanes.
Well, their guidelines for where they can fund, it's about moving people and baggage. It's very simple. If there's a part of the building that is about moving passengers and baggage, that is eligible. And in general, terminal buildings like this, when you look at all the different square footages, you're going to find that about 80% of the building will be eligible. 20% will not be.
Okay, and then I just saw, I think it was this week, and I think it was Ontario, they're moving it so that their restaurant will serve both sides of security. They'll serve on one side and they'll serve somehow, probably like Painfield maybe. Well, no, Painfield was always on the secured side.
Yeah.
But anyway, I saw that Ontario is doing something like that. So it's something we might want to take a look at if it's being allowed, where we could have maybe a bigger facility, but it's not then keeping people. We have a hell of a problem when people go through security.
Yeah.
And we've got all of our planes jammed up down there right now. They can't have a beverage. They can't take anything out of the area. It's a mess down there. So we are reducing our own revenue source with the space constraint that we have.
So the TSA is not crazy about restaurants that feed the public and the privates and the secure and the non-secure side. However, there are examples of it. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania has one. It's very interesting. They literally have a window with a circular, like a lazy Susan, where that is the security dividing line, where they have the public side I can't remember which side has all the equipment, but basically the food is all prepared on one side, and where it's served on the either secure or non-secure side, it all goes through a window. So you can do that. That requires very careful communication with the TSA to get them to approve it, but that's a case-by-case basis. There's not many of those. But you can
Okay,
do
well, I
it.
just saw it and it kind of
Yeah.
piqued my interest in that, maybe because we are a destination airport, and it was
Yeah.
it was our community that kept our restaurant alive during COVID. It certainly wasn't
Yeah.
the air traveler.
Yeah, Mike, might want to talk to Tim Edwards, the director over at Harrisburg. He can tell you how that's working for them, but it's an interesting concept. That's the only one I have physically seen. But I wasn't aware that another airport was doing that. But yeah, there's precedence for it.
Okay,
I think it's a pretty clever solution.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Director Sani, you have a question?
I do. As I was looking at this chart last night, I had a couple of things. First, I want to thank staff and you as well for just doing this refresh. It was very good for me. It's been a while since we've looked at this, and it will definitely prepare me for Friday as well. Our employment, we're looking at almost doubling on day one of being open at the new terminal, from 233 to 396. The first line annual employments.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a 2035 number. That's consistent with your master plan projections.
Okay, so that's the plus
yeah.
10 years then.
That's the plus 10. Yep.
Okay, that helps me.
Yep.
Thank you. The one thing that really stuck out when I looked at this, in fact, I went down the line as I got into it, but our maintenance, janitorial, mechanical storage is going to be shrunk by about 3 times. Will we be providing that off-site somewhere? I know we've got our building, or what, we just have too much space in this building currently for them?
Your current facility, good observation, by the way. Your current facility is if you, as you walk through the building, especially like the elevation changes, when you leave the boardroom and maybe go downstairs, and that whole area, it's not functional.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
absolutely.
space in the terminal that is not functional, and that's what's reflected in that number dropping so much. What we are looking at, or at least suggesting that would be the best for you, and this is consistent with FAA thinking about future terminals and future proofing, is that this is a really simple structure. It is some sort of a box. It'll be a very elegant looking box, I'm sure, by the time your architects put some nice touches on it, but it's not a complicated structure, and that is just a more efficient way to build it. And the thinking is that inside that box, you can move furniture around, and you can reposition functions if things change. But your current building was designed at a different time when aviation functioned a different way than it does now.
Right.
So yeah, there's some wasted space in there.
Okay. All right. And then I want to just acknowledge the restrooms are going to increase, and the checkpoint and queue 2 and 3, essentially, which is great. Could you, the baggage claim, retrieval device, meter greeter, what area is that? Because that's going to increase quite a bit according to these numbers.
Well, so that was based on a couple of things. Number one was just the number of devices that you have there to handle the baggage. You have sort of an interesting problem with a lot of oversized baggage. And what we also learned, because this is something unique to resort areas, is the number of bags per person is higher than the norm.
Yeah,
So,
it's not business travel. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah. People have
dressing
more,
up and
yep.
wearing different things, and yep.
Yeah, and also the meter greeter, that's people coming out there to greet the people they're picking up, family, friends, whatever.
Okay,
And
I
Yeah.
didn't know the terminology, but that makes sense. The
That's why I'm here.
reception of the people coming in.
yeah,
Gotcha. Okay,
reception area. Yep,
all right. Thank you for clarifying.
of course. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this slide?
Well, could be Dino. Do you have any questions?
No, Chair, thanks.
I did have one.
You
Quick
coming
one.
back for a second bite here? Go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, this is, on the hold rooms, you might have covered this, but I noticed the hold rooms are reduced from 6,400 down to 4,100. Wait a minute, I'm trying to read this from afar here. In other words, we reduced the size of the holding rooms.
Yeah.
And so is there a new concept here in the hold rooms? Because we have one giant one that United uses, and then everybody else is squished. So what's the new approach to life in that area?
Yeah. So in your new concept, in contrast to what you have right now, you will have a very nice lined up series of contact gates that will share a large hold room. It will be a common hold room.
Is this
And
field
it,
approach?
Very similar, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
that makes sense. Yeah, it's a more efficient use of space. But we check that against IATA international codes as well as California building code to make sure that there's assumptions about how many people are sitting, which takes up more room than standing. And so we have a mix of that baked in there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Tom, please continue. I'm sorry, Mike, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to remind the board, it's important to know that this exercise was done before the architects are on
Right.
board. We're going to go through this exercise again, but it's informational for you. These are going to change as we start to look deeper into the design with you. So don't become enamored with these numbers because they certainly will change.
Well, there's a building process here. Each
Absolutely.
successive professional builds on what was done before.
That's correct.
I don't know how detailed they're going to get in their questioning of, did you really mean that? You know,
you're
and so
Yeah.
this is an important time for us to understand what the concept is that
Yeah.
you developed here, Tom. So,
Yeah, no, and you're
Yeah.
correct.
Please continue, Tom.
Okay. Well, I gave you a little preview of the next slides here. So this is your fleet. This is just a quick primer on the kind of aircraft. This is Embraer 175 that you're serving, you know, the type of aircraft serving you now. Airbus 220, which is a fairly new product that is 110 seats, and they have a model that's 130. You can see they get progressively bigger. The top one is the Airbus 8. It's the 321 Neo, which is one of the largest. We refer to them as either a single aisle or a narrow body aircraft. It's one of the longest ones and also the widest wingspan. It's very similar to the Boeing 737 MAX 10. They both have very, very similar footprints. We use the A321 Neo just because it, you know, from a planning perspective, it was sort of it just required a little bit more wingspan. So because that's what you'll see in some of the drawings. But this, you know, you're evolving from a market that has had various types of airplanes, including narrow bodies, but a lot of regional jets, and a lot of aircraft are upgrading the regionals to either bigger regionals, like that middle one, the 220, or even consolidating into the larger narrow body flights, purely based on economics. These newer aircraft, those top two, have really incredible economics, and also environmentally, from a greenhouse gas emissions and noise perspectives, they are at the highest international standards. So those are the kind of aircraft you can expect, and that's what the terminal is planned for. Not that you're going to see them on opening day, but you can accommodate them.
If you could go back to that slide, Tom.
Yep.
So refresh our memory, the Embraer 175, that's about a 76 seat capacity.
Yeah, they go to 90. So there are different, there's an E2 version of it. They have derivatives where they stretch it a little bit. So you're kind of in that 76 to 90 seat category for regional jet. But that Airbus 220, I don't know if you follow any of this, but Delta Airlines has purchased like 90 of them. So, and I, you know, other airlines are getting in line for it. It's a very, really a wonderful airplane, nice size. It's not as big as the normal narrow bodies. It sort of fits that place in the middle. You will be seeing those at your airport.
And what about the A321? What's the seat capacity for that?
That will go from 150 to almost 200 passengers. So that's a big gauge up. And what we suspect is, and we've seen this in other resort markets, I use Aspen as a reference sometimes because we see similar patterns. In Aspen, their peak period is ski season, which is first quarter of the year, kind of peaks in March. And what the airlines do is the airlines that are, all three airlines run the same airplanes out there. And what they would like to do, they're also trying to modify their airport a similar way. The airlines would love to swap out the regionals for a narrow body to cover their peaks. So when they have a busier traffic season, they're not adding flights. They're just going to pull out an RJ and bring in a narrow body, a larger gauge aircraft, so they can fit more people on the same plane. And so you'll see that at certain peak times of the year when you have major events happening in your community and in your region.
Dr. Sabo, you had a question?
Tom, is that A220 considered a mainline aircraft, or is that still in the regional category?
It's a mainline aircraft.
Okay, so all the upper two are included within the scope clauses of each one of these airline contracts with their pilots. Okay,
It's
it's
mainline,
only
correct.
the 175 that is confined to the regional jet market. Is that right?
You are correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Continue, Tom.
Okay. So we have a space program that gives us square footage sizing by functional area. We have a good sense of what the fleet is going to be. And now we start looking at how you fit it on your site. So this is the site that was identified in the master plan for your replacement terminal. And there really not any other place on the airport to put it without doing some more significant furniture relocation than you're already doing. You're already getting hangars out of the area, your ARF out of the area to make room for this. So this is the site. What the planning did, and CNS engineers had put this together as part of their design for an apron. So this is your new commercial apron right here. And in designing that, they conducted a little bit of site planning for the building. And they started laying out different functional areas. In the center here, this purple area, that's probably where you're going to have your security screening checkpoint. You'll probably have some sort of a ticketing lobby here and bag claim over here, and then the green areas become your hold room areas and your concession areas kind of sprinkled in there. There's admin space built into that, but you can see aside from this little feature that they put out here, it's a box. It's a box that on two levels, and I'll get to the two level part of it, allows you to have all that space, and it actually provides some area where you can expand. If you start, to hit some of those aggressive numbers, you can expand gates down here. So the first 5 gates, that's part of your basic program. You can see here, we did a layout for a 6th gate for future planning, just to test it out to see if it works. These loading bridges are all capable, each one of them will be capable of serving any of those 3 size aircraft from the previous slide. So they all have the ability to telescope out and also to raise vertically to catch the door sill of the aircraft. These 2 items here, these are called remain overnight spaces. You have those now. These are part of the program in the future. This is basically like a bullpen where you would put a couple of planes. So for example, in the morning, you've got a big push, you load up all your gates, those aircraft push off the gate, and an airline has another one ready to go in and gets the next flight in that second round in the morning to get that next turn going. So very common for airports to have a little bullpen that they can park, airlines can park a couple of planes overnight so that they're ready for that push in the morning.
Where is that? If you signaled on the diagram, we didn't notice it, Tom.
Okay, can you see my cursor moving around?
I do not.
No,
No,
Okay, boy, how about now?
There you go.
yes, we do now.
Okay. Man, I need some remedial training here on virtual meetings. I apologize for that. Yeah, so these are the remain overnight spots right here. So you've got
Okay.
your contact positions, and again, these loading bridges, they telescope out and they go up and down so they can catch the door sill height, which is a lot higher on a 321neo than it is on an Embraer 175. But any of these loading bridges can accommodate any of these airplanes. These are 2 spots that are part of your design for your apron, and you can have more, and that's for the airlines to park a plane overnight so that when you pull one of them out, they can tug one over and load up another plane.
You have 6 gates there, Tom. I thought you said the FAA would only fund 5 based upon our
Yes.
current configuration. Is
Yep.
that 6th one? What was your idea that we were going to do with that 6th one, the farthest one to the right? Are we just leaving an empty space there or what?
You probably would, I would say you would end your building right here, and you can see these last gates. That just becomes a circulation hall to get to your gate. This would be the same. You simply wouldn't build that on opening day. You don't need it. FAA isn't going to fund it. We did this, CNS did this, I should say, to just show that you could, if Mike and his team are successful landing new routes, new airlines, you could add another hallway and another gate here, without a lot of fuss. It would be a pretty simple addition. But yeah, the architect that you're going to be hiring, they're going to be designing a facility for 5 gates, not 6. But you want to know that if you need to pull the trigger on another one, if your air service is growing at a rate that's beyond what you projected, well, here's a space for it. So that's what that is.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Continue, please.
Okay. So again, back to the apron. This has I'm not sure exactly what percent design, if that's 100% or 90%, but it's pretty far along. And this planning was done to really make sure that the location of the building, east, west, north, south, relative to the airfield was in the right spot. We also had to look at the land side. So this is all parking. You have your curb front here. You've got the roads coming in, public parking, various, longer term, short term, bus positions, shuttles, taxis, TNCs, things like that. There's spaces for all of those here on the land side. So this was a balancing act between what you need to accommodate airplanes and passengers on what we refer to as the air side of it versus the land side, which is the roadway and the parking. And again, as was stated earlier, when this goes from a schematic concept plan to something more more design oriented, this will start to look a little different, but we think that certain elements of it are going to remain the same. I'll point out a few of those. The line for this building, the facade, the airside facade of this building is pretty well set by this apron. However, if something happens in the planning and it needs to get moved a little bit, the apron has already thought about that and can accommodate it. It would take away from some of the land side. You wouldn't be able to have as much parking, but there still is some flexibility for the architect to move that, you know, in this direction. But in this direction, it's pretty well set. These are the parameters. You see this yellow area here that's highlighted. That's an environmentally sensitive area that you're not going to be touching. So that is something that the planners working on this were very sensitive to. That was a key part of your NEPA documentation and approval. The roadways coming in, you can see this road here it has the opportunity to open up this area, which is not currently being considered for development, but could in the future. And this is just showing how you would gain access to this part of your airport site. The roundabout is a concept that was teed up in the master plan. And we, in the programming of it, just kind of kept that there. It feels like it works. As you all know from driving along this road here, there's a pretty substantial elevation change. That was taken into consideration in siting a building as well as the land side. We looked at the amount of earthwork that's required, and we tried to find the best balance so that some of the dirt that you have to move can be positioned on a different part of the site. Some of it will have to be removed. But this planning tried to optimize that as much as possible. So this is the general layout that works from an airfield perspective, you know, relative to the taxiway and the runway and all of the protective surfaces. This all works with that, and this building footprint allows you to meet your program and have pretty decent room for expansion if you need it for certain things. We talked loosely about this corner of the terminal being maybe an ideal place for a restaurant, and because of the views over in this area. But again, your architect will work with you to determine what the ideal place is. But those kind of things were thought through a little bit just to make sure that the orientations were good and that there was enough space to accommodate those things. All right. Any questions on
Yes,
the
we do have
overall
one.
layout?
Director Sani has a question.
Okay.
What is our how many current parking spaces do we have roughly?
I would have to go back and look. I have it on my desk, but not in my.
Oh my
brain.
goodness.
That's okay.
I want to say it's
700 or?
Is
I
it
want to
that
say it's around 900.
970 something, I believe.
970. Okay.
Full and-
So
That lose all of our parking.
yeah. So public parking, some of this area over here that is currently related to terminal will be reconfigured for expanded public parking.
Okay. I was
Again,
just curious.
Yeah.
It's not often that we stump Miss Morello, so.
is true.
And that was
This is
not the
true.
intent of it. I just was really
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah, no,
I don't have a context of what we've got currently on
Okay.
site. So the other question I had is, I don't see anything for like the electric air vehicles similar to Joby or where potentially the industry is going to some extent. Is that considered at all in this plan? What is your advice to kind of look at that future, potential future need.
Again, this is just a conceptual plan. When we get into the details, when the architect is on board, we'll look at how we want to accommodate that. That'll be discussion at the board level about how we want to accommodate that. If it is on this site or if it's on an alternate site, we'll have all of those discussions during design.
Okay.
So we contemplated the area as a potential for operation,
Mhm.
but no, we did not accommodate it in this effort.
I see that. And that's, I just want to make sure that we're at least, I mean, if we make the decision to not, or, you know, to say, okay, we'll address that as a one-off
Yep.
or whatever in the future. But okay, thank you.
It's a really good question, and I think it's something that you're going to continue to talk about amongst yourselves. I will say, though, that the industry is still formulating its thoughts on what this means. There are a lot of opinions about what this means, but just to give you an example, the FAA issued an engineering brief earlier this year on how these things are going to operate from just an airspace perspective. And they basically said, we're putting something out to the industry just because they're asking for something. But it's basically for now being treated like a helicopter landing area. And so I would answer the question now the same way I would is, well, if somebody wants to fly a helicopter into your airport, how does that work? It works just the way a helicopter would fly in there now. And but the urban air mobility or regional air mobility with these vehicles, it has yet. The industry is trying to feel out what that looks like. So I think it's something you're going to continue to be talking about even as you design this terminal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Just for the record, we lost Director Leffel. She has a conference to go to. So she left us at 9:56. It's a LAFCO conference, so excused absence from this point on. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
All right. Well, we're winding down. Any other questions about just the bird's eye view plan? All right, I'm going to move on to the, I forgot my little animations here. That would have been helpful about 10 minutes ago.
Well, you triggered a question when you did that. Director Sabo.
Did you
Okay.
make any provisions for a cell phone holding area, parking lot, if you understand what I'm talking about? In other words, some place that people can be while they're waiting for passengers to arrive.
Again, Director, this is not a design. Certainly there's space, we can accommodate that. When we get into design, that will certainly be a consideration, but that was not part of the effort that Tom undertook for us.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's early in the design phase. This is not really even a design. This is more like blocks. We're just showing you where blocks can go, that it can fit on this site and how it might fit. It does not necessarily reflect, and it will not reflect the final design, where we will have those discussions about cell phone lots and electric vehicles and electric aircraft. That's where we have those discussions.
Go ahead.
Can you use a different mic? Could you and Dave maybe? I'm concerned that the public maybe won't be able to. Yeah, I don't think it's picking up at all on that mic. Thanks.
All right. We're going to move on to a few other conceptual things. So this is what you were looking at was the main level, again, security screening area, ticketing, bag claim. So this would be your passengers would park here. Is a section view, come through the front door, security screening checkpoint. I apologize for the fuzziness. And then go through here onto their plane. You can see this is pretty slick. There are no elevation changes here. It's a single level, very simple. When you walk in the door, if your architect does a good job, the passenger will be able to see their plane as they walk in the door. they'll be able to see it all the way through their journey, which is great for wayfinding. So it's really an ideal setup. And the terrain is what is driving this. You know, you have low terrain here on the airfield and high terrain up here. The lower level, that's all support and mechanical. So you've got like baggage screening and makeup, and offices for TSA and for the airlines. That's all underground. So the public will never see those things. This is where the tugs will take the luggage and bring it inside the building to be handled, or bring it out to the airplane. So it's really an ideal setup from a site perspective.
So Tom, the green, light green area, that's the seating for each individual gate?
Yes. Yeah. And we have some things in here. This is probably a concessions node. You could see we've got two large gate hold areas and here, and then you'd have some concessions in between, some concessions over there. We just sort of sprinkled it in there for, again, your architect is going to be much more specific. As Mike was saying, this is more block diagrams to make sure we're accounting for the square footage. And it's a real common part of the process that you go from that spreadsheet with numbers down to blocks that represent square footage. And then your designer will make that look like an actual nice interior and how passengers flow through it.
Okay. Please continue.
This is just, we're wrapping up. This is one of the final drawings that CNS had put together. And it's against the backdrop of a real live aerial. So you can see, the apron, the size of that apron, and then the building box there where it goes, and how the aircraft are going to move around there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think by going through this exercise, not every airport does this. A lot of airports hire an architect and say, please build us something that we need. And what you're doing is you're saying, yes, we want you to build something, and we're telling you this is what we need. So this is we've looked at our demands, and we've made some decisions. We're still open to discussion about refining those as you start to design it in more detail. We've also looked at the site, and this is where that building works from an airplane airspace perspective, as well as a site perspective. So you're essentially giving the architect some boundaries, which I think is a good thing. Architects are wonderful. They can be very creative. Sometimes that creativity can get the better of them. And so they're starting from a position of, all right, this is your sandbox to work in. Please do not go outside the sandbox. So anyway, I'll just kind of leave the group with that.
Is that airplane sitting on taxiway Alpha?
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed that it gets narrower as after you depart the terminal area. It gets narrowed to the left, gets narrower to the right. So
It's just the new area. It's just showing the new area. That's all.
Yeah.
All it's showing is.
Yeah.
Construct.
Yeah.
The
okay.
dark is just what they're going to construct. The additional alpha already exists and it won't be touched. That's all.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I
Any
think that's all
additional
I had.
questions? Mike, anything you want to add in closing this up?
Just simply that this is conceptual. It was to get you back up to speed where you were at a couple of years ago. I don't believe that Director Pick was even involved in those discussions as yet. So
Right.
Getting him up to speed with the rest of the board. And it's in preparation for Friday. Friday is when you will talk to the two architects that we've selected for you to consider. We'll have some preparatory questions for you. Certainly, you're going to go off script when you want to, but we'll give you some go-bys about questions to ask. And I wanted you to just get up to speed and get in the mindset of what you're about to do, and that's select your architect for the terminal project. It's an important decision, and I thought it was important that we get you back to the proper mindset and give you the information that we had given previously.
Director Leffel brought it up, but maybe it's a good time to just reinforce it. And to give a little teaser, we have some good news coming up as far as increased seats in our market.
We do.
Going up about 50,000. Is this going to 50,000 annually? Is this going to impact any of these plans, what we have right now?
It may. We're going to, because of some of the successes that we're about to see. But a lot of Tom's work already took into account some of that growth. The growth is occurring just a little sooner than what we had anticipated when we went through this exercise a couple of years ago. So it may, but we'll go through this exercise again, true it up with the architect in hand, and then come back to you with this is what we think the size needs to be. That'll be part of the design process.
With this increased capacity, does this open the door for increased funding from FAA to help pay for this?
Potentially. Depends, as Tom indicated, it depends on where the space is and its utilization. If it is public space that moves passengers or baggage, FAA will contribute to that. If it is private space, office space, or administration space, back office space for the airlines, FAA is very reticent to contribute to those, depending on the business model. If we go with what we had talked about previously, which is more of a common use structure, you'll get FAA's contribution to be greater because it is public space. It's not assigned revenue generating space.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll start down here, Director Pick.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few. First of all, thank you to staff for the presentation, especially to me as a new guy. So, Tom, thanks for your presentation. There was a slide in the packet that wasn't presented today that talks about opinion of probable costs.
Yeah.
And those obviously the costs were estimated at some point and they're going to change. The slide is dated January of 21. We've seen a significant inflation since then. I'm curious. There we go. I'm curious how that's impacting our funding, our available funding as we move forward.
We won't know that until we get deeper into the actual design. These are estimates based on Tom's work.
Yep.
Based on the space and the allocation of that space as it relates to FAA funding. We think that they're fairly reasonable. There's, as with all estimates, there's always a little bit of wiggle room. So these are maybe a little stronger numbers than what we would have normally seen. So we think maybe some of the inflationary impacts will be covered by the cushion, if you will. The other thing that we need to keep in mind is that we're not going to be in a building process or in a bidding process for about 2 years. And I would hope that in that 2-year frame, we find our way out of the inflationary environment that we're in and the numbers become more realistic. We're building today, these numbers are probably a little soft.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Thanks, Mike. So, and lastly, there were some great points brought up during the presentation by my colleagues. A cell phone parking area, consideration of albeit very, very cutting edge technologies such as Joby and other potential electric taxis. I would just encourage staff to be capturing those so that we don't lose them and don't have to say them again as we get to the design discussion with the architect. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Director Sabo.
Yeah, I just had a final question that really wasn't discussed in here. The heavy business jet traffic that we have in here is an essential component of our airport operations here. Now, I guess where I'm going here is has this been reviewed in detail with our Jet Center and Del Monte Aviation partners here? Because unlike when I was an airline pilot, we had dedicated areas that when it was time to push, we pushed back in our own area, then we entered a taxiway. Here, we're pushing right onto the taxiway, and we're going to be blocking ingress and egress and all that. And I want to make sure that those in the FBO business are okay with this, because when you're coming and going flying a Gulfstream, you want to get going. You don't want to be sitting behind somebody that just pushed and is trying to figure out when they're going to get going, or they got their clearance and all that. So we're pushing onto an active taxiway, and has this been reviewed with the FBOs?
Okay, first of all, we are currently doing the exercise that you just articulated.
I know we're doing that.
In the new building, the depth of the ramp will be such that we will no longer have to do that. We'll have a deep enough ramp from the building that we can push back, do all of the final checks before taxi out, then you enter the taxiway. It's incumbent upon us to do that, because what we currently have does not provide a safe
Right.
operating.
Okay,
profile.
so the way this is planned is even with the wider
We eliminate that.
wingspans, we can push,
Yes,
still
sir.
remain on the non-operating side,
Correct.
and then we can taxi out onto the
Absolutely.
taxiway.
Yes.
Good,
Yeah.
good point. Thank
Yeah.
you.
But to your question, when we get into design of the building, we will have those conversations with the FBO. We will share with them the ramp design, just for informational purposes, just to show them that we will no longer have that impact on the taxiway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Sonny.
Nothing, just thank you for the refresh. It was helpful, especially for preparation for Friday.
And my thanks to staff for scheduling this, and Tom for your great PowerPoint. Very helpful. But the only concern I have is something you said early on, that this sizing is somehow came out of a committee in the United Nations. So heaven help us if other than that, I was with you 100%. So, but thank you, Tom.
Of course. Yeah, I wish you good luck on when you do the interviews. I think Mike and Chris have presented you with very qualified candidates for this. I know you're going to ask them good, tough questions, and yeah, I just wish you luck with that. It's an exciting project for any architect. If I was in that business, this is something that I would be involved in, because it's really this is a chance to design a building for your community that's going to be around for 50 years. This is a legacy project for y'all, and I think it's pretty exciting. So best of luck with it. Happy to be helping out in any way I can.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for
Thanks,
being a
Tom.
part of this.
All right.
I'm sorry,
Chairman.
Mr. Lapierre?
Mr. Chairman, can we grab a 5-minute break, please?
Yes, we may, can. Thank you. See you later, Tom.
Bye.
Oh.
She is.
Welcome back. It is 10:32. All board members are present with the exception of Director Leffel, who has an excused absence from this point on. Mr. Lapierre.
As we discussed earlier, item 2 on the regular agenda, I request that that be tabled. So moving on to item 3 is resolution 1832. It's a resolution that authorizes and approves the creation of the position of deputy director, and it eliminates the position of deputy director, strategy and development. It also amends the salary schedule to reflect the change in position and change in compensation. This is part of a modest reorganization of the management team with the arrival of Mr. Wilson. Ms. Morello has been functioning as my deputy director for all things operations and maintenance. So she has basically functioned as a COO. Her previous role, should you choose to move forward with this as Deputy Director of Strategy and Planning, I've asked her to do much more than what was in that role. So this reflects the current structure that we have and the current operating profile that we have, and corrects the structure to reflect that operating profile. I would ask the board to adopt Resolution 1832.
Okay, very good. I'm sure we have some questions. Let's start on this end. Director Sani.
Thank you. Yeah, as the executive director just said, we're looking at some org structure changes here. And last month we did the controller position different. I know last month I had said I'd really like to table this till we kind of went to the conversation about whether we've got the right people and right structure in place for our strategy meeting, which I think is at the beginning of November. So I was kind of surprised to see this. My thoughts are not about the position with Ms. Morello at all. I certainly agree with you that she's doing more. It's more about, do we have the structure and the team in place long-term that we need? And I'm thinking also about even succession planning here for us as a board to consider. Have we had the agenda for November? Is that being discussed at all? Are we going to look at, because this is kind of, I feel like we're taking these pieces versus understanding the greater picture
We
to some
can
extent.
certainly review that. Remember, however, that the organizational chart is not approved by the board. It is what I put forward, thinking that, and the thinking behind that is quite simple. The board is policy and oversight. So you oversee the organizational structure. You're certainly more than welcome to ask questions, give me input, but that really falls under my role to make sure we have that structure. The discussions about succession planning, those are discussions principally that we should have, the executive director and the board. We can certainly have those, but the structure of the organization is really the purview of the executive director. That being said, we share with you as part of the budget process, and I think we shared with you when we created the controller's position, a new organizational chart that better reflects how we operate today. I think we have people with this change. We have people in the proper role with the addition of Mr. Wilson. We have people in the proper role and proper functions. We've eliminated some potential crossover that I saw that we never took advantage of. And we have accommodated those tasks under the umbrella of Ms. Morello's position, which is reflected in this job description.
I appreciate, I do think it falls under your purview. I do think we as a board, though, do need to understand kind of structurally what we're
Absolutely.
looking at.
Sure.
And I
happy to
feel
have
like
those conversations.
we're not, I don't have the bigger picture ultimately at this point.
Happy to have those conversations.
So I'm really hopeful. I know I requested with the consultant that in November, we do look at that and at least just kind of an overview. So I'm hopeful that's in. I'll leave, I'm gonna hear from others as well at this point, if I could. Thank you.
Just to reconfirm or make sure I understand what you just said. When we looked at the organizational structure that you presented 1 or 2 meetings ago, it's all a blur, to be honest with you. This reflects the action we're taking today, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And we have had a couple of departures. Is that going to affect that organizational structure at all? or-
No, absolutely no. As a matter of fact, the new organizational structure better reflects our organization based upon those departures. So the creation of the controller's position was to reflect the departure of Mr. Burkholz, and right sizing and developing the proper strategy for that position. The same is being taken into account in Ms. Morello's job description, position description, I should say, that I'm proposing that the board adopt. So we're actually probably ahead of the game when we take these steps because we've already reflected that in the organization.
Okay,
And this
thank
is
you.
just, this is right, this is moving people into the positions that we anticipate in that organizational structure.
Director Sabo.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Certainly, my comments or my questions are directed at the job description and the salary thing as we discussed in the finance committee
Sure.
without referencing the incumbent, or
Understand.
Chris,
Understand.
Um, from a financial standpoint, my sense is that if we're increasing a job description, or a category right now, and giving it a rather substantial pay increase to it, it should reflect increased responsibilities and increased duties for which the person occupying that position is responsible for. And could you summarize what changes occurred from the existing position
Sure.
to this position to justify, and I'm not talking personalities
that's
here, justify a rather substantial increase in the salary scale?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. Part of the reason for doing this is that very thing. Chris's position as Deputy Director of Strategy and Planning never contemplated her taking a leadership role over maintenance and operations and the day-to-day functions of the airport. It did not contemplate that. The new job description contemplates that that's what she's going to do because that's what she's doing today. She is functioning more as a chief operating officer than as a director of strategy and planning. So this right sizes or corrects the job description to reflect what she's currently doing.
So if I understood what you, and please just bookmark it here.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is you're trying to increase the compensation for taking on the maintenance and something else responsibilities. Or maybe it's just maintenance.
Operations. Yeah, I think probably better said than that. You got the gist of it, but probably better said than that is I've already asked Chris to take on those roles, and she is taking on those roles and has for some time now.
I'm just
What
going
the-
by what you
No,
wrote down here.
No, I understand. What this does is it reflects what this job description reflects what she currently does for the organization. Her previous job description, Deputy Director, Strategy and Planning, did not contemplate her taking that leadership role. So it puts her, she was working in union language because she used to be a union negotiator. She was out of scope. I'm
Okay.
putting her back in scope.
Okay. Did she file a grievance?
She
No,
didn't.
Sorry. I know those words.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else other than maintenance that you anticipate that this job description is asking the person who holds this position to do that the previous position did not, the one you're eliminating?
Oversees maintenance operations, the day-to-day operations of the airport, is integral in our day-to-day communications with FAA operations, including the air traffic control tower and NorCal. That's all under her purview. Has been for some time. This properly reflects
It
that.
wasn't in the previous job description.
No, it was not.
Okay. All right. That answers that question. The other question I had is we previously had a position called a deputy executive director, and then we had one for administration and finance, and I I don't know. I guess we didn't, we just had one, or did we have two?
We
Okay.
had a disparity. We had a deputy executive director of finance and administration and a deputy director of strategy or planning and strategy and planning, whatever.
Okay,
We eliminated the deputy executive director position at the last board meeting when you created the controller's position. Just a titular change. This is probably in my mind, a better position title because it better reflects what we do.
okay.
Does that make sense?
The question that I had was, and I'm kind of big on this, what happens if you get run over by a truck?
Mhm.
Okay, and that you can call it succession planning, who's going to step into the shoes, for the interim. It took a long time to hire you, and so,
And look at
is
what
it-
you got.
huh?
Look at what you got.
Yeah, well,
Should've taken-
you were out there with a cup, and selling pencils, so it got easy, but just joking. The succession planning is important. So, I was a little concerned when I saw that we eliminated deputy executive director, regardless of finance and administration.
Mhm.
We're just now have a director, okay? There is nobody that reports to you that takes over for you in the event that you get hit by the truck, Now, as a result of finance committee, I think you added in something about in your absence, you may appoint this person to act in your stead,
Mhm.
but I felt a little uncomfortable. And it's your job to organize your own staff and all that. It's our job as a board of directors to assure that our needs are taken care of. One of those needs is to assure that in the event of a catastrophic event, the district is protected, with experienced personnel and all that. So I'm a little uncomfortable with taking away this relationship between the executive director and now just down to a quote director. And maybe that's not what the title doesn't really reflect what you have in mind, but it says something to me. Could you elaborate on all that? And could
So-
you live with a deputy executive director?
Yeah, I could. I chose to go just deputy director just for simplicity. If
For
you prefer
simplicity?
to add deputy executive director, you will not find me objecting to that. I just preferred deputy director for simplicity.
Well, if
That
there's
was-
one director, it says, it gives some meaning to me, to have a deputy executive director and as opposed to
Yeah, but
a
I
director,
would not
which
object.
means that there might be three of them, three directors out there, so that's kind of where I am. I'd like to make that modification. Final thing that I had a question on was the job description for this individual has a requirement that they oversee the management of financial planning, but that's related to grant funding and all that, and I
correct.
kind of get that. And then to analyze operation, to evaluate performance, to determine areas of potential cost reduction, program improvement, policy changes. That's a mouthful.
It is.
And I looked at the requirements in order to get the job.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about I didn't see any requirement that you have any knowledge, that you have any experience in that kind of financial planning and forecasting and, and efficiency stuff, can you help me bridge that gap? Because your requirements don't match what the responsibilities you put down.
And I think they do if you take it in this context. What the job description is attempting to say in short language is budget. It is the responsibility of this new position to oversee the budget of the areas of influence that he or she, since we're talking generalities, he or she would be responsible to oversee. So when we get to budget, it is the responsibility of this position to work with the staff that they supervise to exactly do what the job description says. Find ways to be efficient, find ways to save money if that's appropriate, or find ways to determine what we need to spend to keep the operation functioning well and efficiently. That's what we're trying to say in that language.
I kind of get where you're going. That's the words don't in the experience requirements or the job qualifications, it doesn't back that up, you know. So I won't oppose that because I kind of know where we're going on all that, but I'd sure. And the job descriptions the qualifications and all that are not really our purview. That's your purview, but it really doesn't back up what you said. This is a very significant position that you just created here.
It is.
And I guess you're the chief financial officer, as you know, you have the controller reporting direct to you. There's no relationship between this position and the controller. Is that correct?
You're looking at the management team. We work as a team.
I know, you know how to have a meeting together, but in the
we do
reporting
more than that.
relationships, if it's not working right, we're holding, I guess, the board holds you responsible for the financial condition of the airport. Is that right?
I
As
think
opposed to this executive
I
director.
think that's the way that it always has functioned, Director. You make me responsible for the financial affairs of the airport district. And I take that responsibility.
Okay, in a general sense, you're responsible for everything. We get that, but in getting down to a little more granular level, you know, the extent to which you have somebody that's primarily responsible for that, that would be Mr. Wilson and you. Okay, that
Principally
does not
Mr. Wilson.
include this position.
This position interfaces with the controller virtually every day. Obviously, when we're doing grant work, that involves both positions. When we're doing CARES Act draw applications, that involves both positions. When we're in budget, that involves both positions. So they interface very, very closely, probably more closely than most places you would see, because they are responsible. Chris's responsibility for a good preponderance of our budget requires that she have day-to-day, almost day-to-day communications with the controller.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, I can support this change, and with the addition of an executive director thing, and when you change the job description, change it to add as your fallback, not just when you designate that person, but if you, in your absence, this person, this executive director position becomes the acting director, executive director of the airport. Is that a fair statement?
I can change that language to
Okay.
provide that clarity. That is the intent.
Is that your intention, though?
Absolutely.
That if
Yeah.
you are down sick for 3 weeks,
Yep.
4 weeks, 6 months,
Yeah,
that
we had,
this person would take over in your stead?
correct.
Okay.
We had that occasion a couple of years ago when I was out for 3 months with my
When you were
issues.
on that golf trip?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, that was one.
That was
yeah,
a long
okay.
golf.
No,
trip, yeah.
I'm kidding.
No,
but
I
you understand where I'm
Yeah,
going?
I do. Yeah.
Because right now it says you have to designate that person to be your stand-in.
And I
If
think
you're
that-
not in the position to be able to do that, it needs to automatically revert to it. That's my opinion.
It is on the final. It's the last one. Act as acting executive director as appointed by the executive director during his or her absence.
As appointed. That means that you said she can, or that
Mhm.
position can act in my stead.
Yeah.
I want it to be a little bit, there's one director speaking. I want it to be a little more an automatic reversion. If you're MIA, you know, you're gone, not available for duty on a ventilator. We need to have that authority that you blessed it and went to. I know it's a small
Understand.
point.
No, I understand what you're
but
saying. And
that's a
there's way
structure.
We can modify the language.
Sure.
got to reflect that. I'm not opposed.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Pick.
Thank you, Chair. Mike, I'm sorry I missed last month. I read the minutes. I still have questions about last to Director Sani's question, sort of this holistic approach on the salary schedule. We created the controller position.
Correct.
Why did we keep the Deputy Executive Director, Administration and Finance?
We did not. That position was eliminated. It just wasn't taken off of the salary schedule.
So
When we created controller, the concurrent action was to eliminate the Deputy Executive Director, Finance and Administration.
so this is incorrect.
Yes.
Okay. So the Deputy Executive Director, Administration and Finance
Is no more.
is no more and will
That
be
is not an
deleted.
approved Position.
Okay. That answers that.
Yeah, that was in the resolution that was passed.
It's not in the minutes. It may be in the resolution. It's not in the minutes.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay. Chris just reminded me. We did keep that position active because the potential for Mr. Burkholz to come back on a part-time basis, we needed to have a slot for him. We'll eliminate that position. That's the intent. Yeah, Chris reminded me the process that we used.
okay. So just to be clear, it is not eliminated.
It is not, we will eliminate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Need it.
All right. So we now have a controller position. We have a Deputy Executive Director, Administration and Finance position, and we are proposing the addition of a Deputy Director position.
Currently on the books, you are correct. We will eliminate the Deputy Executive Director, Finance and Administration. At the next meeting, I'll ask you to pass a resolution doing that. So you will have a controller, a deputy executive director, if that's the choice.
Yep.
Of title, and you'll have an executive director. That's the management team.
Okay. I shared Director Sabo's thoughts on the title. I think the Deputy Executive Director is helpful in understanding the broader role. I also share his view on the subtle but important language. Assumes duties as executive director in the absence of the executive director, as opposed to when appointed or as appointed. It's subtle, but it's meaningful. Frankly, I share Director Sani's overall view that we get this, that we get the structure right. I looked through the minutes. I didn't see, and it may have been at a meeting previous where we reviewed structure. I just don't recall. And it is absolutely your purview to build the team you want to operate the airport. But it ties to the salary schedule, which ties to our fiscal oversight. So there's a reasonable and logical line there.
Yeah.
That I'd like to see at some point. I don't know how time sensitive this decision is. If it is time sensitive, happy to address it today. If it's not, I'm happy to see a structure and a revised salary schedule associated with it in the very near future, as you wish.
I would ask you to move this forward so we can complete the transaction. I'll be happy to provide that. And that may be the subject of some discussion during the strategic planning exercise.
Chair, that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. I was going to ask if this is on the agenda for discussion. If not, it probably doesn't have to take up most of the time, but it would be helpful if we go over it one more time.
Yeah, I think in the context of the terminology that's been used here today is succession planning. I think that's appropriate for strategic plan.
Mhm.
And happy to have those discussions to get you right in how we operate. I think I should make as part of that introductory how we are structured today.
And what was Chris's old title before this? You're going to have to help me out.
Deputy Director of Strategy and Planning
And that one will be eliminated,
and Development. I'm sorry.
and that will be eliminated.
That's
Okay.
This resolution eliminates that position.
Okay. And just to I was here when we created the Deputy Executive Director of Finance and Administration. And so was Chris. At that time, we had two deputy general managers, I think they were called back then. One working in operations planning, the other in finance. The salary, but the finance director was clearly the number two. But because we compared to other airports, the finance side made less money than the planning side. So the deputy general manager made more than the finance general manager. This title was done to correct that and to make his salary a little bit higher than, because clearly he was the number two. Sorry, Mark, it's just the way it worked out, I guess, in airports. Finance was a little bit underpaid than the other position. So that's why we created that position, this title.
Which position was that? I'm sorry, I got lost there a little bit.
I hate to mention names, but we had Mark Batista working in the planning side.
Sure.
Charlie Hayes
This is-
working in the financial side.
Mhm.
Charlie was the number two and worked in that capacity, when Tom wasn't available, Tom Greer, our general manager.
Mhm.
But Mr. Hayes was making less than Mr. Batista because the salaries were compared to other airports and people working similar positions.
Yeah.
So this title change was done as a justification to raise his salary above that of Mr. Batista.
I cannot speak to what you did previously. I can only
Yeah.
tell you that.
I just throw it out there for
Yeah.
historical reference. That's
Sure.
why this
Mhm.
long title was created.
Yeah. The Deputy Executive Director of Finance and Administration was a creation when the former finance manager, Jerry Merritt, retired, and we went out to fill that role.
Right.
Contemplated at that point was an expansion of the role beyond finance, which is something, as I said last month, we never were able to accomplish. So the change to controller better reflects how we operate today. And does not contemplate expansion of that role into things other than finance and accounting. Mark's going to have his hands full as it is. Number one, getting up to speed. Number two, helping shepherd the financial affairs of the airport district as we move into the capital improvements program more deeply. He's going to have plenty of time to do all of that. He won't have time to do some of the things that I had contemplated when we created the previous position. So Chris is taking on those roles and has since probably the last couple of years. And this reorganization helps me better articulate how we function today. And so Mark's role will be finance, accounting. He's going to be integral in as we move forward with the financial planning and the financing of the capital improvements program. That's plenty for him. That's plenty on his plate, believe me. Chris has got everything else.
Yeah, and I do support the change to Deputy Executive Director and the inclusion that it's more automatic in your absence.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem with either of those.
Yes. Go
I have
ahead.
more questions.
Director Sani, go ahead.
Thank you. And what was the vision for the finance role? Sorry, what was the vision for the finance role? What else was going to be included? Some property management things
Property
or?
management, and initially it was operations
Okay,
as well.
okay,
That was the vision previously.
okay.
That there's, but
And that's, I see in this current without having a framework, but I really see that we potentially have a operations gap. And I know that we're also hiring for that position right now, right? We had
Yeah.
somebody leave our team recently.
Yep. We actually had two people leave the operations department. We have since replaced one, and we tendered an offer that was accepted yesterday to another.
So both have
So
been filled?
Both will be
Okay.
filled as of, I believe, the new hire starts Monday.
Okay,
So those two will be filled. We have a superintendent of field operations who supervises maintenance and operations. I've always felt those two have to work closely together,
sure.
and they were not. So we created the superintendent of field operations, which was Whitney's position. I think you met
Mhm.
her.
Mhm.
She's since left.
Mhm.
Mark Curtis is now in that role, and he's supervising those operations and maintenance and coordinating their activities. Mark
Makes
reports
sense.
directly to Chris.
Okay. It just seems like, and I absolutely support the creation of the executive director, deputy director. I think it makes a lot of sense. I agree. Miss Morello's been in that position and doing a lot of that work. As one board member, again, it's like I don't have the bigger picture, and every month we're doing these changes where it would have been really helpful to kind of have the vision of where we're going. One other thing, did our HR consultant look over the job description?
They were not on board when that job description was created.
Okay, I think that would be really helpful. And again, this is because we're changing the positions and we're doing things. I mean, I know this is quite specific to, I mean, I look at some of these things like even, would we really find somebody who's aware of water quality and land quality? I mean, to some extent, depends. I mean, that's very specific to our area.
Yep.
But, and then also any certifications that would be preferred in this. So I'd really like to see our HR consultant at least review this as well. I'm going to make a motion that we make sure that we have at least an hour of discussion for the organizational structure in at our November strategy meeting, and that this would come back to our board in November. And again, it's not that I disagree with the position. I'm fully supportive of it. I just really think that we could dot some I's and cross some T's and make sure that we're creating the structure that's really going to provide success for the district long term.
Chair, I'll second that for discussion.
Well,
I'm confused. Are
Uh,
you
we-
suggesting that we, with your motion, are you suggesting that we defer what is before us right now?
For 1 month, yes, that we would have a discussion about it and it would come back to the board. And again, it's not that, that it would come back to the board in November.
so that is a motion
Yes, that is the motion.
and you're seconding that motion?
I am.
You said for discussion. What do you want to discuss about it?
Chair, what, the comments I'd like to make, look, this may very well be the right thing to do. The problem with how it's being rolled out here today, right at the moment, is it's a yes, no on what's in the packet. And frankly, I have some questions about structure. I have some questions and again, great catch on the HR review. So there's some due diligence here that I think needs to be done before we give it the green light. I don't think, again, it's important to parse this from the incumbent candidate and that she's doing the work and that she's deserving of it from a significant structural change to our organization enduring an impact on the budget. So for that reason, I'm supportive of waiting a month. I would like to discuss structure. I don't know if it takes an hour necessarily, but I would like to discuss structure at the retreat. And just ensure we've got a good, again, common shared understanding of what you think you need to run the airport and it supports the vision of the airport. And then we get behind it.
Okay. I would ask only that if there's something more that you need me to articulate than I've already articulated about the structure, please ask those questions, because I think I've been as clear as I can be about what the structure is. I'm not sure what else I can accomplish for you, what else I can answer for you. So if there are questions, please ask those, because I don't know where to go to answer your concern.
Speaking for myself, I think the issue relates to understanding what our vision is. And again, this does tie to a strategic planning retreat that's upcoming. And then having an understanding of how your structure that you propose fits, nests with that. And I don't think we've had that conversation. And again, I apologize if you presented an organization chart that was revised in the last couple of months. I don't recall it. I just don't. So that's kind of what I want to see, before we make this change.
We can add.
Please.
Notwithstanding the comments that I made before, there are additional things that I think need some clarification and elaboration for the benefit of the board, where our involvement is to assure that certain things are getting done, and they are getting done by virtue of the job description of the people that you have assigned to that position, where we approve the position and the job description. So I think there needs to be more, as we identified today, about the succession planning and the executive director title. That's part of that discussion, to clarify exactly what the role of that person is relative to not only you, but the board. When we talk about identifying opportunities for cost savings and financial analysis and all that, that traditionally has not been one of those things that position has done in the past, but it is going to be in the future. I guess from the additional discussion would be, what does that mean? How is that going to be reflected to not only you, but us? Second thing is in the position of the controller position that you just described, the role Mr. Wilson will play in financing and the capital improvements program and all that going forward. That wasn't in the job description that you provided for the controller. It was being aware of lenders and lending opportunities, but not really having a significant role in that capital financing role as a chief financial officer, as opposed to a controller. So I think there needs to be some discussion in that regard relative to that position, but I'm not exactly sure where Director Sani is going in, or limiting her discussion. Or is it just to the executive director role, or is it all of the positions?
Oh, I mean, it's a
Maybe
discussion.
you could elaborate on all that, but I'm just trying to add some more information that I would like to have as a director, without interfering with your ability to construct an organization that meets your needs. But part of that organization has to meet our needs as well. So. Go ahead.
Could I answer? So I went back in the packet and the org chart is there, but the fact that we don't recall it, I don't think there was much conversation about it. And that's concerning to me. So I appreciate that there is something here. I'm concerned that operations, I'm not sure that we've got the person we need. We know that we tabled the public relations conversation. We've got a consultant as our HR person. So I think it would just be good to kind of just have an overview and make sure we've got the structure we need. And again, it's your team to build. I absolutely agree with that. And my hope is that you're able to present to us so that we can just feel comfortable with the direction. And my concern is that we're getting pieces versus the vision. And that's what I'm looking, but it is here. I guess I don't remember much discussion about it. And I apologize if it's something that I missed last month.
I don't think so. It was provided to you to elicit that conversation and those questions. I cannot do beyond that. We did not do a presentation about that because simply it was presented to you to try to elicit those
Mhm.
questions. It,
And he did last month because I did say, are we, we're eliminating this position or I don't, and we didn't vote to eliminate it. And in fact, I thought that we would have a conversation and strategy to make sure that, eliminating it was the right thing. And the resolution does not eliminate the other position
and
at this
I
point.
inaccurately stated
Yep.
that when it was
Yep.
corrected by.
Yep.
by-
So I
Yes.
think, there's just an opportunity for us to just all get on the same page and make sure. And I appreciate the direction you're going. I need a little bit more information or discussion. I don't think it's information, maybe. It's just discussion about it.
Thank you. Well, counting the votes, I don't think, I don't think I think it's the direction of the board. We'd like to look at this at another time. This can be retroactive, right? As far as pay goes, there's no,
If you allow me to do that, yes.
yeah, and certainly I would support that. I would hope that we could have this discussion, a presentation on the structure, because there have been some changes. I do recall the org chart, and I clarified in my mind that this reflected what you were doing. Maybe there's an opportunity to spend some time, and I don't want to limit us to a set number, but just to discuss this, answer our questions and look at it in its entirety. And if we can do that during the strategic planning. And I believe it's also the direction of the board. We would just like the new HR people to take or Mr. Ritchie has a lot of experience in this area. He can certainly take a look at that and see if, there's any, just to get that buyout. So Chris, nothing personal here. It's just an opportunity with all the changes that are happening in a very quick turnaround time to just look at the whole structure.
Okay.
Is that the direction? You think that's the direction of the board we'd like to give?
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
if I may, a couple of things. It can certainly be retroactive pay wise. So there's nothing, there's certainly no intention of preventing that at all. And the second thing is we have a motion, a second on the floor that would formalize the discussion at the retreat and request that it come back for action at the November board meeting.
You want to do that or just table it, move to table it? What's better?
I'm fine tabling it. I would only caution that we have a very limited time for strategic planning.
Yes.
And if we get balled up in this discussion for hours on end,
Yeah.
you won't finish the strategic planning exercise. So
Yeah.
please keep that in mind.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
Procedurally, the proper process would be to ask if Director Sawney would consider withdrawing her motion in favor of tabling the item to the next meeting and give direction to staff to bring it back at that point in time.
I'm absolutely comfortable with that and definitely am supportive of the retroactive nature of this too. So make sure that happens in November, hopefully.
And Director Pick, you can.
As am I.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I had some suggestions, which I think the executive director kind of agreed with. One, changing the title. Oh, sorry. Changing the title. Number two, changing for succession planning purposes, that phraseology about whether somebody if he gets run over by a truck, he automatically reverts to it. Now, I don't know what to do with that relative to us deferring everything to the strategic planning meeting. So maybe you could bring that forward, just by gentleman's agreement, bring that forward at the strategic planning meeting.
That
Or-
would be in my purview and I'll be happy to do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's best. You've gotten a lot of different direction for us, so we're just handing it back to you and
I'm so used to
we we look forward to seeing this and getting this done. So thank you. Okay. So it's been withdrawn. We don't have to take a vote or anything. It's been tabled.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to Monterey Peninsula Air item number 4. Comes with an approval recommendation, Monterey Peninsula Airport District on airport rental car agreement and lease. Are you going to handle this? We're going to hand it off to Mr. Ritchie.
I think I will tee it up and Mr. Ritchie will be there to provide color commentary.
Okay.
This has been something that we've been working on for probably on 18 months now to get a new concession agreement with our car rental operators. It has been probably 15 years since we had our last discussion about this. So the agreements that we have, which are still in place, are 15 years aged. Much of what has been written here is reflective of those agreements with some time changes so that they more accurately reflect today's legal environment. But probably more importantly, there are the two things that we've put in here give the airport a little bit more control over the operations of the car rental concessions. The two areas in particular are related to hours of operation. If you remember, we've had problems with that with our current operators for some time now. Really started during pandemic. We were a little understanding of that during pandemic. As we started to come out of pandemic, we found ourselves with operators that were closing before activities ceased. That became a problem for us. We lost customers. We provided less than stellar customer service for those getting off airplanes. Finding a car rental at times was almost impossible, if not impossible, because no one was open. So we put in this agreement some language related to hours of operation and a liquidated damages clause that says if they fail to adhere to those hours of operation, we can charge them $1,000 a day until they get their hours of operation in line with what the agreement calls for. Secondly, we did do benchmarking on commission structure, and 10%, believe it or not, is still the industry standard for concession operations and car rentals. So we left the 10% in place. What we did, however, was change the minimum annual guarantee. The previous agreement, the one that's currently in place, calls for a $1,000 a month minimum guarantee. The new agreement calls for $10,000 a month. Now that sounds like a big change, but when we look at the average of our operations, no one has paid us $10,000 a month in years. They've always paid us more. The activities warrant an increase in that minimum guarantee. So we've chosen $10,000 because that's pretty close to about 60% of what they normally would pay us. So those are two changes there that are pretty significant, but they're timely and they're temporal. So the balance of the agreement, Director Sabo expressed concern at Finance Committee about activities on airport that don't generate revenues for us, that aren't commissionable. The agreement specifically says not specifically, but says that if activities occur on this airport related to car rental, there is a commission that is paid. If you look at the gross revenues, the gross revenues definition. So if in fact a car rental decides that they want to park cars off property, rent, write a contract here and then put you on a shuttle, doesn't matter where the car is delivered, you pay for that here. Likewise, if your rental begins off property and the car is delivered here, you pay commission as well. That's embodied in the gross revenues discussion in the agreement. So we're in a position here where it's time for us to get more serious about a new agreement. This agreement was written by our council, and because this board sets their rates and charges by ordinance, we can present this agreement to our car rentals once you approve it, to our car rentals and say, this is the new agreement at the airport if you want to continue to operate. Doesn't mean that they won't come back and try to negotiate, but the structure we use is you set rates and charges by ordinance, which you do every year. So this reflects that.
And this will be modifying our existing rate and charge schedule that we've set up.
It is in keeping with the rates and charges schedule that you currently have, yes.
Okay. And you did run this by finance and lease committees and both approved?
I got the only feedback negative, or the only questions I got, not negative feedback, the only questions I got were the ones that Director Sabo has articulated and I just tried to cover.
Okay. Anything to add, Mr. Ritchie?
No, it summarizes pretty much the agreement. There's also, the square footage rent for in-terminal presence and some other things that are also separately set out in the agreement. So, you should be aware that it's not just the delivery of services or goods in the form of a rental vehicle, but if they're occupying a premises inside the terminal building or in the parking areas, they are assessed for that as well.
And I did a review of this for lease, so didn't check for any misspellings or anything like that. So, but just refresh my memory on, because we had this discussion on placement, where different people are placed and how that is used as a tool sometimes by airport to ensure compliance. Does this give you that flexibility?
No, it does not. To get to that, we would have to change the business model we have with the car rentals. We would then have to go to proposal based on minimum guarantees. So you'd have different minimum guarantees. But in that proposal process, you would then have the opportunity to afford competition for which spaces are occupied. So you basically would say to every one of the car rental operators, you might be moving now.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, we will be moving with the new terminal, so.
Yeah, you will. You will. I chose not to go that direction simply because of what you just said. If we were to put this out for competitive bid based on space and minimum annual guarantee, we may be shuffling the deck down there for a limited period of time. I don't think that's an appropriate way to address our tenants and concession operators. We'd be asking them to spend a good amount of money to move and then 4 years from now, move again. I don't know if we want to go in that direction, I would suggest we hold our powder until we get to the new building.
Okay. I just throw it out there because I remember we had the
Yeah, we
conversation.
did.
Okay, let's start down on this end. Director Pick, do you have any questions?
No, Chair, I'm ready to move approval.
Thank you, Director Sabo.
Okay, and thank you for just incorporating some of my concerns from the Finance Committee. Dave, you're Scott Huber.
I am for the moment.
Yeah.
Do what I can.
Much more handsome, Scott.
Well,
Intelligent.
we can
fun.
talk about the hair thing later. Okay. All right.
For that.
I'm very sensitive to us losing control because this is a long-term agreement. It's new and all that, losing control over our ability to collect revenues for business that is really promulgated because we have airline passengers coming in and going out of this airport. all of us have had that experience where there's the traditional Avis and Hertz and all that with a rental office right at the airport and all that sort of thing. We also have had the experience where there's off airport things that come by with a little van, okay? And I don't know how they manage that with the airport out here, and I'm concerned about that. And so let me ask you specifically, if in fact Pebble Beach, and then this has happened in the past, Pebble Beach, Sand City had a Hertz office or a budget office over there. There was an enterprise office on, and they would come and send a guy over and they'd come pick up the passenger here. They'd write the contract over at these other locations out here. How can we protect ourselves from that sort of activity, or a van coming through and saying, here's cheapo rental car, just get on board, we'll write the contract elsewhere. Do you understand my question?
Question. You reframe it for the entire board just to make sure that I get it right.
Always, when I speak, always, but worthy of reframing, so.
Your question is, assuming there is a rental car company that decides that they are not going to operate with a physical presence on the airport property, and they're just going to come on the property, pick people up, and pretend like they're not doing business here. How are we going to capture that lost revenue because they're skirting the rules versus those who enter into these agreements and are on the airport property? Correct?
Correct.
Yes. So the agreements require a concessionaire. They do not require a physical presence on the property. So if you are a commercial enterprise and you come onto the airport property, the agreement itself doesn't force this, but your rules for conducting business on the airport property will cover that and allow you to take, the contract. So it's a different kind of enforcement mechanism. It's not a contract because those individuals would presumably not be entering into a contract. So you need to enforce that through your other airport rules and regulations with respect to commercial activities that occur or are catalyzed by activity that occurs on the airport property, such as picking someone up or dropping them off.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Okay. So we have a methodology for not only enforcing this stuff, but we have an operational capability to kind of detect when we're getting scammed.
So I can't tell you about your operational capabilities, but I think generally speaking, the airport administration knows when people are coming on and off the property for commercial purposes. And if they do not, that would be something for the board to explore.
And if they detect that and they turn it over to you and Scott, you're able to enforce whatever contracts we're about to enter into.
Are available to try to recover any losses associated with that work.
Okay.
And to hopefully.
As long as that's written into the contract, I'll believe you. That's was my primary
So understand
concern.
it's not in the contracts, right? Because that is a different kind of.
No, but our ability to enforce been doing business at the airport, whether it's physical presence here or you drove a cheapo bus
You're a
out.
local government agency and you have regulatory authority for the
Okay.
activities that occur on your premises.
Two things I will say. Number one, this is what you're articulating is very similar to what we do with what we just did with Turo. When we find new activities of new operators, we will bring to you an agreement to get them in line. Scott and Dave have the ability to force those operators in line. Secondly, it is very common in the industry, if we have an off-airport car rental operation, to have an off-airport car rental agreement where
Okay.
we still make commission. We do require that any commercial operation that provides shuttle service, van service, or bus service, inclusive of Pebble Beach, have permits to operate here.
Okay.
We watch those permits, we watch the operations, and we ensure that they have the proper permitting. And
Okay.
when they don't, we either get them in line with the permitting, or if it is a car rental operation that's off airport, we'll get them in line with an off airport car rental agreement.
Okay, that answered the question. And this does apply right now, since we have an agreement with Turo.
Yep.
Turo, then this would apply to Turo as well.
Yeah, that's the example I used. So, and Turo does Turo now is obligated to pay us the commission that was approved by the board.
Okay,
And understand, just to underscore this, the reason that we would look to enforce that fairly rigidly is because not enforcing that kind of an obligation on those who are conducting business here just really aggravates and takes business away from those entities that
Sure.
come to us and enter into these agreements in good faith.
Yep.
So it's a, you know, in our view, it's part of the model of fairness and even-handedness with respect to who's doing business here on the airport.
I think that that's appropriate. Well, first, it's, you know, it's a revenue source of the airport, but the second thing is developing a fairness with what people are playing by their roles.
Relationship with community partners like businesses is very critical.
Okay, I'm gonna bring up a couple of personal situations here, and maybe you could respond to how we deal with them. There is something called booking.com. And I've used this recently. I just got back in from North Carolina last night at 10:30. Wonderful. I feel so refreshed. But anyhow, I booked an Avis rent-a-car through this booking.com. It was half the price of doing it directly with Avis. Now, it was a little fun. I booked it and I signed a contract with booking.com, but Avis delivered the thing and all that. Do you think that we would still be capturing our take on the whole thing?
Absolutely.
Do you
Yeah,
understand what I'm going?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do, because I use a similar product. They're called aggregators,
Okay,
booking.com or Expedia, or if you're in the hotel business, hotels.com. Those are aggregators. Those companies don't write the contract with you. That contract is written, in your case, in your example, by Avis.
okay.
That contract is commissionable.
Answers the question,
Yep.
you know. And finally, I had the experience in Asheville yesterday when I turned in the car. I'm turning the car in at, noon, 1 o'clock, something like that. And I go up and, the counter and turn the keys in, all that. So I see this line of people. I mean, it was a long line. There must have been 25 people in it. I said, you guys trying to rent a car? I said, no, we already rented the car. We have a booking. They don't have any cars. And, and they were all saying, did you like the car you just turned in? Because we're going to get that next. And do we have any mechanism for enforcing kind of in this situation? They didn't have enough cars, or they were not washing them and preparing them for the customers. In other words, I know Asheville is going to get a bad rap for that. They're going to get a lot of customer complaints because these people have been standing there for an hour and a half waiting for a car, and they're going to get a bad rap because Avis didn't take care of them. Do we have any way over a period of time, this is repetitive, of dealing with them for poor customer service?
Yes, we do. If you look in section 4.5 of the draft agreement, you will see that there's a requirement that the operators conduct themselves in a first-class manner. This is typical of a presence at any other kind of airport. And so that implies, it's implied, that they're going to stock with appropriately numbers and types of vehicles. And if they do not, they're in breach of the agreement. And then you can, take your remedies associated with whatever that breach is.
Okay, so we have a way
If
to
they have an
enforce.
operator who doesn't have any cars and they're not providing service, they book the cars to people and then they're not here. When those people show up, I'm certain if you ask them, they're gonna have a layperson's view that that's not a first-class operation, right?
Right.
And that would be a breach of the agreement.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Director Sabo. Director Sonic.
I don't have anything. We discussed it in lease and very comfortable, and thank staff and everybody in reviewing this. It's been kind of a challenge for us for some time, and we realized the opportunity or the need to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I don't want to beat this horse any more than we have. But the couple things that I recall in the past that had happened, we had car companies storing cars here, and you would make arrangements for off-site, but you'd have to come to the airport to pick it up. as long as we're capturing that. The CFC, right? The, that's a fixed amount, correct?
That's fixed by state law.
So I know when you talk about the booking agencies that are out there, a lot of cities had problems and were suing them because they were paying only the TOT, which is a percentage, like 10 or 11 or 7%, whatever your individual city sets up. They were paying it on the fee that the hotel got. And the other fees, they were not charging TOT. So
Just remember that the contract is written by the car rental agency.
Right.
It's sold by Booking.com or Expedia, but the contract is written. This agreement requires that when the contract is written, that they pay the CFC.
and because it's fixed,
It's
there's no
fixed. It is-
danger of them coming back with a lower amount because of the,
No,
so
it's
that's good.
fixed by contract.
And I do remember back during the pandemic when they closed a lot of their sites that they had off airport, they kept the airport going. And we had a car accident. We were getting it worked on. The insurance company just said, you go to the airport and pick it up. I would hope that we captured it, but I don't know. There's that opportunity that these things can slip through.
Yeah,
But we do have the option of doing an audit.
we do.
And if there's a mistake in the audit, they pay for it. If there's no mistake, then we pay for it.
That's correct.
I don't ever think we've done an audit, have we?
I don't think that we've had, since I've been here, I don't think we've had occasion to believe that an audit was necessary.
Okay.
The agencies that we have here are reputable. On the main, they are good. Sometimes their operating profile is not quite what we would like closing early or not opening early enough. But those are manageable.
Right.
But I don't think that there's any question about the accounting. But we always have the ability if we find some kind of a discrepancy that we don't.
And I know we've never pulled that trigger before, but that's a
what you
tool
got.
in our back pocket if we think that there's a problem.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, just to echo what Director Sabo said, I mean, I read these industry reports when car rental places unloaded a lot of their cars, sold them because no one was using them. And now, supply and demand and prices have really shot up for rental cars.
I mean, seriously, if you've been in the car market trying to buy a new car, you can't find a new car.
Right.
That's the problem with the car rental agencies right now is they offloaded 60% of their vehicles during pandemic and oops, the business came back a lot faster than they anticipated. And at the same time, the availability of cars to replace the ones they offloaded is not there.
Yeah.
So they can't replace those cars. They're still not up to full fleet.
What a mess.
Yeah, it is a mess.
Okay, I'll entertain a
Move to the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first by Director Sabo, a motion by Director Sabo, and a second by Director Sani. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Pick,
Yes.
Director Sani,
Yes.
Director Lapple is excused, Director Sabo,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. Okay, it passes unanimously. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break at this time. What do we want to do for lunch? We're going to be losing Mr. Pick. You have a
Mongolian.
Standing meeting.
standing meeting to go to,
sir.
so you are excused.
Thank you.
And no further action. So we won't be taking any votes. Otherwise, we'd have to be in complete agreement.
Actually, won't be any votes in closed session regardless. Actually,
No.
but I believe you may have Director Lapple back.
She did say at 12 o'clock she's available to come back on. So why don't we take what do we want to do for lunch, guys?
Well, what's your estimate, Dave, of how long the session is gonna go for close? I'd like to just.
Okay. Would you order in? Okay. Why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break? I'll put some menus out and we'll come back at 11:55, let's say.
It's a lot of.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Postman.
I'm old school. Sleepless in Seattle.
So we are back in session. It is 11:57. We have lost Director Pick, present are Director Sabo, Director Sani, and myself, Chair Miller. And Director Leffel may be joining us at noon. If so, we'll announce her presence when she comes back. Let's move on to board and committee reports first. Does anybody have a question with any of the staff reports that we wouldn't cover under committee reports? This would be like
I never understood that. Say that.
so we don't look at under committee reports, you know, we talk about noise, we talk about employments and stuff like that. But we don't talk about like the fire report or the police report.
Okay, so is it your plan? I had the same problem with Percio. Is it your plan then to have committee reports?
Yes,
Okay.
so, but
Do we have questions on the staff reports? Is that
on
what
the
it is?
staff reports that we would not be covering in committee.
All right.
I have a hard time with this too.
Yeah,
Bill,
well,
it's-
okay, so
but
ask the question and if I, and we'll
put it in the box of
we'll
blocks.
put it in the box.
No, the staff reports is for me, and the staff reports, I don't have any particular questions.
Okay,
About. So I just want to emphasize my desire to have a little bit more information on where delays and cancellations occur, whether they're originating here versus originating at outstations. So
yeah,
that's my
Okay.
ongoing request. So
Okay.
That's it.
sounds good. We'll talk about that during air service. And Director Sani, anything for staff other than committee report?
I'm looking right now. The one thing I had written down was to have the executive director's report added to this list somehow, maybe, or otherwise, if this is the time for those questions.
What list?
To the board commit, like just as a time to discuss, or, I mean, it seems every time we've got questions for it.
That's what this.
Okay.
period is for.
Okay.
Do
So.
you have any questions on the executive director's report?
Yeah, I'd like to see it too, just as
Just as
Director
a
Shaw.
line item. I find the reports, but we can, I mean, it's a couple months away too,
Okay.
for, you know, we
Yeah.
could look at, but
I agree with
I
you.
think it would be nice to have it. Let's see. I did have a couple things about agenda item H7, then the activity report from the executive director.
Go ahead.
So it was a pleasure to meet Mr. Wilson. That was discussed in there. And it sounds like, I guess I feel like we're having some new employees be hired and stuff. And if they're introduced to us here, which I know has been a thing for the board in the past, that sometimes we've had new people and haven't been introduced. But however, so that you're sure to let us know. I mean, I appreciate being able to say hello and welcome and things like that. The new HR consultant, her first day was last week for one day. And she's just going to, so it says something about she's starting Wednesdays, but then she's got flexible scheduling.
Only until November when she starts regular office hours on Wednesdays.
Okay, okay,
So just until then, it was to adjust for her schedule.
sure,
But she started
understand.
last week.
I just wanted kind of that regular schedule. I think that will be helpful. Awesome news on the half marathon. And we've got our interviews and I think that's it. And then the PR activities you mentioned, my overall thought on that is it's very slanted to one area. And I know we've given feedback about that as well in the past. I'd really like to see a couple of reach outs or phone calls or meetings for a couple of things out of your comfort zone. Whether that's ag or, you know, a Rotary Club or something like that, because
All
it's
of that.
always,
All of that will happen when the PR
okay,
role is filled.
okay.
Um, That is.
And I
that is
appreciate that.
fully
I know that there's too much. It's just we're always seeing kind of the same players in a lot of ways. So I'm hopeful that that does improve and that we get greater outreach to the entire county and community. Okay. And
And
one
that will
other,
be a subject of discussion at the next month's meeting, that contract, right?
I think it will be in our strategy meeting, actually, whether it should be an outsourced or in-person role. One other thing, and I think this is maybe for a different bucket. Maybe this is for,
This is the air service usually covers employment.
okay,
but
I just wanted another line, even if we had to go back 2 years. Because we've only got 1 year's data here. It was always kind of nice to see like 3 years,
What do you think?
the employments.
Okay,
And I know we dropped the COVID years.
yeah, we did. There's a second line there that's circled on the top. That's this year.
That's just starting,
Fiscal
but
year.
maybe we could go back 2 years when we had a full year before COVID. Just to see, because I know we've had growth since then. So just a thought, a request. Okay. But that will be, I guess that's air services too.
Air service, we can talk
Okay.
about that at air
And
service.
and noise. That's it.
Do you have some questions on the executive?
Executive Director's report. Yeah, and the Monterey County Arts Council, a big supporter of art in the airport, you know, but you met with the representatives of the County Arts Council to discuss their interests. And then you introduced the Arts Council representative, our current curator. I didn't understand all that. Can you elaborate on that? Is this a positive thing for the airport? I mean, did the county indicate they wanted to participate here, or how's that work?
Yes, yeah, they reached out to us to see if they could participate in the Arts at the Airport program. I indicated to them that it was done, that currently is being done by the curator, and I introduced the
Is
two
that
of
a
them.
part of the Arts Council,
No,
the curator? I don't
No,
know who the
she's not.
curator is.
Kathy Cope.
Okay,
She
but
is-
who is
she's
she
not part
employed
of-
by?
Hmm?
Who is she employed by?
We pay for the arts program, and she takes a small stipend from what we pay.
Oh, so she worked for us.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the involvement of the Arts Council would be something new, and there may be the opportunity to expand that program a little bit with Arts Council help. But the first step is to get the two of them talking, which we've done.
Okay. As one director, I'm very strong supporter of that. I think it's a big, very good community effort, and I guess aren't we currently working with some kind of an arts council here locally? Somebody's doing something out there. But who put that up?
Kathy did.
Oh, Kathy, just by herself?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's, when you see those exhibits, that's Kathy. She curates them. She finds the art. She
Oh.
hangs the art. She fixes the displays. She does
Okay.
all of that work.
All right, and of all the PR activities that you listed on here, did anything come out of it which was valuable for the airport or anything like that? All
Not
these
sure what-
meetings?
Just continued networking. Other than we hosted MCHA board meeting here and had a great turnout and had the entire board, well, those that were in attendance here at the airport. I mean, that's positive. We've not done that before.
Okay. And are similar activities planned in the future for Salinas and elsewhere in
Once
the
I
county?
have a PR person on board.
Oh,
I don't have the lift to do all of what your expectations are. So I
Wow.
need that PR.
I'm
person.
just asking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
and yeah, absolutely. I would love to. That is part of why I want to bring the PR person on board.
Okay. All right, thank you.
My understanding with the arts program, the money we give Kathy, not nearly enough to put this on. She goes out and gets grants and other things to make it happen, correct?
Not typically,
What's that?
not typically. There aren't very many grants available to us as a government organization. But I mean, she looks at them, but we really aren't typically eligible for them. So it's in our budget. It's a line item budget that the airport provides.
Okay, very good. Let's move on to committee reports. Let's start with, and I should have grabbed my glasses, and of course, budget and finance. Bill.
We had a good meeting and we met with the digitally with the audit partner. We got a clean opinion, which means no problems. We explored a couple of areas that are typical concerns in an audit. All of those indicated that there wasn't a problem here. And we also discussed, the impact of future general. What does GASB stand for, Mr. Wilson? Okay, well, we got GASB 89 and GASB 91, which are coming, and I asked about the impact of those on the airport, and they deal with leases and all that, so it may change some of the numbers that we see. I don't think they're in the numbers we typically worry about it as a board. They're on our financials out there, but it's a way of assuring that all of the information related to long-term leases. And Mr. Wilson, if you can correct me if I'm saying something wrong here, but we're accounting for the impact of leases going forward over long term, just as if they were kind of like debt. Okay, is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think it's, yeah.
Hi, you all. I'm back. You're gonna
Yeah,
need to
Mark.
speak up.
Well, I was talking about GASB 89 and GASB 91.
Yeah, I could barely hear you, but I could basically.
Okay, so we talked about that. It didn't seem like there was going to be substantial impact, but when that comes up in the next year's audit, then I guess he's going to elaborate more on all that. We discussed Mr. Chidlaw's report and his contract and all that, and I guess we're deferring that contract to another board meeting. Is that correct?
November, yes.
Yeah, all right. And then there was a number of questions about the financials and they were all explained rather adequately, and there was this telephone expense. Apparently now some telephone expenses are being picked up by Delray Oaks that or at least their communication expenses, I guess, picked up by Delray Oaks where they hadn't been picking them up before.
The county next gen charges.
The next gen, yeah. I don't know whether that's telephone. Is that
No, that's
telephone or
that's
radio?
Radio and dispatch.
Radio.
Okay. And I guess the same thing applies to fire, is that that the city of Monterey is picking it.
We still have a capital obligation,
Okay,
but the operating budget is paid for by our
good.
contractors.
Okay. Let's see. And district capital costs. It was my suggestion that we consider doing a little bit more with $5 million that we have sitting in unrestricted money market accounts that's paying 0.01%. That was my recommendation, and there was a bunch of detailed items on the financials, but all of them were adequately addressed and and our cash reserves are very adequate. Okay, so end of story.
Thank you. Anything to add, Director Leffel? This is
No, what I
finance
could
report.
hear was fine.
Okay, and for the record, Director Leffel rejoined us at 12:08. Thank you. Any questions for finance? Okay, hearing none, thank you both. Air Service, Marketing and Community Relations. Dino Pick had a great report he was going to give, and then he ran out. So let me see if I can go by memory. We have good news. Beginning in March, February. So the planes will actually upgrade in February? Okay, and it's March for Alaska, or, okay. So beginning in February of next year, American Airlines will be operating Airbuses 319, which is configured for how many seats? 90, I think you said?
128.
128 seats.
Yep.
Almost double the Embraer 175.
90 in the cheap seats, and then
Yeah.
another 38 up. Probably. I actually flew on one of those. Really a nice airplane.
Yeah, they are.
So that would be great. This will be the first time we were trying to figure out. I'd even sent a text to Tom Greer to see if he knew, but as close we could figure out as we have not. And when we say this is mainline service, this is not a regional carrier working on behalf of American. These are American pilots flying American aircraft. American Airlines aircraft into our airport. And that hasn't happened probably till the mid-90s when Fort Ord was still active,
About
as
3 decades.
as
Less
best we could figure out. So this is huge. You are crafting a press release to go out later this week, I believe, Mike?
We're multitasking. It's being done right now, and it is now being sent to American for their final approval. It goes out tomorrow.
Okay, great. And you'll be forwarding a copy to us as well, right?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, please do. So that's going to add a little bit over 25,000 seats.
Net gain is 37,960 new seats.
Available seats.
Annually. Yeah.
Yes.
So that equates to just over 3,100 a month. And if you figure they run 80% load factor like they're doing right now, that's about 2,550 new enplanements a month just from that activity. That's pretty good.
Great, great news. So we.
Carl, you might want to trade microphones with Mike because you project so much better than he does. And his just is not working for him.
Wow.
You know, we've
better. If I eat the microphone, is this better?
I can hear you echoing through the,
Okay,
so that's
well,
good.
We'll take a chew on the microphone.
So did you hear the number of seats, Marianne?
Fortunately, if I just squint my eyes and I can hear.
Okay.
That was
Sounds
a
good.
joke.
Yeah, I know. So that's great news. Press release is coming out. The other good news is Alaska Airlines is adding a second aircraft in March to San Diego. That would be an Embraer 175.
That's correct.
And that has the potential of adding how many seats, Mike?
27,740 on an annual basis, which amounts to about 2,300.
Speak up.
So it
Yeah.
goes to 2,300 a week for a week,
2,300 a month.
2,300 a month. So this will be a second daily flight to San Diego. And
And what is the date of that start? Have they loaded it?
It is loaded. It starts in March. I don't have the exact date.
Chris, do you have it?
No, I don't.
Is that a seasonal thing?
Not that we're aware of.
So could we have the date by the end of the meeting so that we all can start trumpeting it?
Mrs. Morello is looking that up right now and will let us know. Thank you. So. Yes, no, that's great news. That's like 20% of our last year's employments, will have additional seats.
Yeah.
More than 20%, in the market, but, now we just have to fill them. And that's going to be our goal. Anything else, to report? I know we had some discussion about, the Seattle flight. No word now on that.
Yeah,
the-
nothing on Seattle in terms of an
Additional-
additional flight. Nothing there. We talked about social media and the bang up job that Amanda's doing on that. So we reviewed that. Beyond that, I think talked a little bit about noise, and we had 6 noise complaints for the month. That'll change next month with the military activity that
Right.
always elicits more calls. And most of that is around the air show. And then one noise complaint or one terminal complaint about music in the terminal.
Yeah.
And as I indicated in committee, that's an impossible task. Taste in music is so diverse in populations that you'll never find an airport that can get it right.
Mhm.
I think the comment was about volume, not content.
No, it was more about content really, but volume was at the early morning hours is an issue because it's fairly quiet here. But
And
then-
volume is set for the PA announcement. So if you turn down the music, you turn down the PA. So
correct. Yeah.
that's one of the issues. So we have
Yeah.
to, the music level is set by the PA volume.
Do we
I'm-
need the music? I mean, is this important to have music? It is,
Yeah.
even if people
no-
don't like it? So, okay.
I don't think it's worth spending a whole great deal of time on, folks. This is a problem at airports throughout the country. You'll never get the music right. If you choose to not have music in your terminal building, you'll get complaints about that.
No music.
Yeah.
Well, and with 250,000 employments that you can double for deplanements, how many complaints are we actually getting about music?
Not
So,
that many.
yeah, I agree. We don't want to give it too much attention. Unless we see 250,000 complaints, and then we gotta address the music, I guess.
Then I'll get on and say, chase them all away.
Okay. And you did talk briefly, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, meeting with Mike from,
Yeah.
maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's a good point because I had forgotten that. Mike Bowen will be in town, our consultant, our air service development consultant will be in town. We're meeting with Rob O'Keefe and Amy Herzog on the 23rd for a morning meeting to kind of do a couple of things. One, start to coordinate our air service development efforts. As you know, the CDB and now Visit Carmel are very intent on being partners with us on air service development. And we're going to coordinate those efforts. And we're also going to talk about a potential coordinated purchase of GPS or cell phone data that will allow us to track not only our own passengers, but visitors to the peninsula. We'll be able to, if this works the way that it is intended to work, and we've had a couple of demonstrations so far. We'll be able to track people in this community that are visiting. We'll be able to know where they come from, and we'll be able to know what airport they used. And conversely, we'll be able to know who's using our airport going outbound and where they come from. So it is newer data. It's data that airlines don't usually see. There are a few airports that are doing this. There are a lot that are starting to jump on board. So this is not going to be new very long, but it is much deeper, richer data than we currently are using through the DO process, which is a database based on airline reporting to the federal government. So this is an enhancement of the data that we currently use as we're measuring our market, measuring our performance, and most importantly, exhibiting our market's potential to the airlines.
And you had mentioned whenever you meet with an airline, they always ask you for data that they don't have access to.
That's correct.
And
Yeah,
this would be an example of that data.
this is it. Yeah.
So this is something that has the potential of impressing the airlines when we're trying to impress airlines.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk to airlines, the data we use is data that they have access to. Almost every airline uses a database called DO, which is what we use too. So we're regurgitating information they can access if they chose to. We're doing their work for them, actually. That's how it ends up. But invariably, what they always ask for is, tell us more about the market. Tell us more about things we don't know. How many hotel room, what's the hotel room growth? What's the RevPAR in hotels? Does the CVB have a number of visitors that they attribute to the community? Data they don't have access to. That's what they look to us for. This is data they don't have access to.
And when you say coordinate with these other groups, that's a euphemism for call sharing,
Very good. The GPS data would be a cost share.
Yes.
Early numbers look like they're between 30 and 40,000. And if we split that 3 ways, it gets to be pretty bloody inexpensive for us to get brand new data. And part of the reason that we're doing this is a focus that makes sense for us is CVB is in the business of reaching to other markets to get people to come here, both individual visitors and group. We don't reach that market well. So they're in Chicago and they're in Dallas, and they have people that are selling the Monterey product for visits and for groups. We don't play in that sandbox. I want us to, because we know based on CVB data, we get about 4% of the people that come here use this airport. The balance are using other airports. Imagine if we could capture 10% more of what's coming here. And that's the intent, is to work much closer.
Did you say 4% of the people that come
4%
here
of-
use this airport?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the market for us. That's the market I see for growth.
Well, is the rest drive market, maybe?
They-
Is the rest of it drive market, or
fly in.
are you just talking about people that come here by airplane,
No,
San
this is-
Jose versus us?
This is people that come here by airplane.
We're getting 4%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge market for us. We don't capture. They fly into San Jose or to San Francisco and they drive down. Now, there are reasons we're not going to ever capture it all, but we can get some of it. The data that we would get out of the GPS experience will help identify where those people come from. But more importantly, it helps us and the CVB identify where they should be marketing. So, and if we're successful, the benefit inures to the local community too, because suddenly you've got a stronger demand, which means more capacity comes. It's a different approach to how we've done business in the past, but I think it's an approach that warrants a good, healthy effort.
Okay. 4%.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that number. Any questions about what Mike talked about? I see you have some questions about this. I'll talk about it in a couple seconds, but on what Mike just talked about, any questions?
Chair Miller, Director Level.
Oh, Director Leffel, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So comment and a question. So when I look at the complaint log and I read what somebody wrote and took quite a bit of time to write, it seems also, Mike, that somehow, and I know they're not our employees, but they are the face of our airport, that we've got to coordinate all of our partners that are in there to make it a good experience. So when people go away, they don't tell other people not to use us.
I don't disagree. We can't head off every negative complaint, but we can certainly coordinate with our partners, and that is done regularly by operations. Operations meets with the airlines downstairs almost weekly to have those communications.
Or are they communicating the kind of complaints that we're getting?
Yeah.
They are?
Oh, yeah.
What
But,
do
I mean,
they
that-
say? What does Envoy say? What does Envoy say when they get those complaints?
I'm not in those meetings, so I can't tell you, Bill. But we do echo those concerns to our tenants.
All right.
Anything
Sounds
else?
like a public relations issue, a little bit here, so.
Well, I know we got a very long complaint by somebody who
They showed up.
came early.
They showed up early like they were told to do on our website. Surprise, surprise, some people actually do show up
They
a
read
couple
it.
hours early. Most show up much
That's
closer to,
that's the beauty of this
Yeah.
airport.
but then they took delays. I mean, their
Yeah.
flight was canceled. They didn't get that information from the airline. So they spent a great deal of time in the terminal building and were obviously frustrated.
And Director Sabo, I'm sorry, Director Leffel, does that answer your question or?
Well, I did not. I voiced to all of you what my experience was, which was less than exemplary. And I just see that I understand employment is tough, getting good employees is hard. But this looked to me like it's just a comedy of errors of a bunch of people that kind of half did their jobs and half not. So I'm just saying maybe taking this and handing it to the restaurant, handing it to TSA and say, look, everybody needs to do a better job. We're all trying to expand our service, but this is not good service right here. So we're in the people business.
I hear you. Yes.
And
wanted
you
to-
know what? I don't want to rehash every committee meeting, so I've got 30 more minutes with you all.
Okay, let's move as fast as we can then, but Director Sabo, you had a
Yeah.
question?
I guess we're gonna talk about this later, this thing.
I can talk about it.
Well, but I would like to make this request. The website analytics, I'm sure Amanda spends a lot of time working this whole thing. Is there a way to put together some kind of an executive summary narrative that says, here's the good stuff, here's here's where we're strong, this is, because I'm looking at these analytics, they really don't tell me anything that is valuable to me. It just says, we got this many hits on the webpage, we got this many hits, and that means a lot, I'm sure, to Amanda, but it doesn't mean much to me. Is there any way she could put together just 2 or 3 paragraphs of here's the value of what we got, what's happening, because we're spending money on this, you know.
I'm not sure exactly.
I
what
want a
can tell you
narrative,
beyond
an
that.
executive summary that says
No.
everything that says in
This
here.
is- That was designed to do exactly that for you. If you recall, we gave you data much different than that. You asked for it to be that way. I'm not sure what else we can tell you.
Why are we doing this?
Okay.
Okay, I guess that's the question. Why are we doing this? And are we accomplishing our objective in doing this? That's the question that I have.
I can tell you this is reviewed by the Air Service Committee. We found the information helpful and put out in a format that we can understand. I mean, it's with graphs. It's easier to digest for me than just written narrative. Director Sani, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I actually really like this, but I hear, I mean, Director Sable, maybe you just want a highlight of top 3 to 5 things. I mean, for example, paid social posts, 35,000 people we reached with our comment about the California Wine Month. That's awesome. 36,000 people got refreshed about our airport, got refreshed about Monterey County and one of the great industries we have here. So Bill, I'd even.
Well, okay, and maybe I'm outdated here, but I guess the extent to which the comments and the words that come up on these hits are important, some of them are not positive.
So
They're negative
There
and all
there
that sort
aren't
of.
comments. This is,
Nobody says anything on these.
there are a couple of times when
yeah,
when there are comments made, but they're not comments about whether they like it or not, typically. The track for that is really the number of people that you reach and the number of retweets if you're on Twitter, the shares. It's getting the word out. It's not getting feedback back. That's what this is about.
yeah, this most common or this most reached over 36,000 people saw 35,785. There was only one post comment, but there were post reactions of 26. So that's a thumbs up, that's a like, that's a love.
Post reaction.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what
So
that means.
I'm happy to sit down with you,
I don't want to
Director,
sit
if
down
you
and
want
talk
to.
about it. I'm
Okay.
just asking for a little narrative summary
So-
of, how is this valuable? And if we can't do that, we can't do that,
Yeah,
so
I don't know how to cast it any other way.
how
The
much,
value
how
is
much
the
out of
outreach.
the $9,000 advertising expenditures is represented by these efforts here that Amanda's doing?
Yeah. So to Director Sable's comment, I would like to bring up this page, the Advertising and Marketing Monthly Activity Report. And I see social media completely missing from this at this point. I know we had social media spend. It's not here. And this is where I go with our PR person and really being involved in our district to some extent, in our organization versus an outside consultant, because I don't think we're getting the overall view. I'm also wondering what local publications, we've got radio and TV here, but what local publications, what magazines, what websites were we on, things like that. So I think maybe there is an opportunity for just a summary page of our marketing efforts potentially. I'm hearing, but I really like the analytics. I agree. You got to deep dive and understand it to some extent. So.
Thank you. I want
Okay.
to comment.
Okay, real quick on this, when Director Leffel and I attended the conference ACI conference in Minneapolis, one of the vendors there sells a product that it's a software that ties into the airlines reporting industry where they get their clients. Typically, when we look at leakage, we're going with a 30-mile radius according to Michael. And that's 30 miles, not as you drive, but as the crow flies. And when you put 30 miles on a map, that gets us into southern Santa Clara County. It gets us into San Benito County, and I don't think we're really competitive in those markets. They're at 101. They're either going to go turn north to go to San Jose or south to go to Monterey. And turning north is a lot closer than going south, where they get off the beaten track and make their way to our airport. The data that the airline reports it, but they can do it based on zip code. We've never looked at that before. He ran the zip codes just for the peninsula. We didn't do Salinas. We didn't do Santa Cruz. Those would be interesting numbers, by the way, to see how we're doing in those other cities. But, and I wanted to share with you, this is how the data comes. Don't be confused by that comma that seems to be off. That is because he said I downloaded it on my telephone. So it just populates it differently and throws a comma in there. But if you look at it on a normal spreadsheet, that's corrected.
On that first line under passengers, it has all those numbers. What is the actual number there?
Well, just take the comma away and round up or round down the decimal point, and that's the number. So if you look at Monterey, and so what I did is I put those on a chart, and that's on the last page. So if you look at City of Monterey, here's what I found interesting. More people who live in the City of Monterey, and this would include Delray Oaks, this would include Pasadena. You know, if you have a 93940 area code, you're in that catchment. And more people fly out of Monterey Airport than they do San Francisco. Over 2,000 more will fly out of our airport than San Francisco. And so we're actually capturing 41% of the flying market. And so if you look at this chart, this is how many people fly out of Monterey, how many people fly out of San Francisco, how many people fly out of San Jose, and how many people fly out of Oakland. San Jose is capturing 17.7% of the market, not very much at all. We're at almost 35%. San Francisco, they're the powerhouse. They're bringing in like 39% out of all the peninsula cities. And as you move further away from the airport, the number seems to go down. The one that I found very surprising, well, two, Monterey, how well we're doing in Monterey. And then Marina, there's a room for improvement in Marina. More people are likely to fly out of, by a considerable number, go up to San Francisco. 34%, well, yeah, look at the numbers. So I'm not sure if there's any utility here. I just found it interesting. I put this table together. It gives the subtotals of all the passengers coming out of them. Monterey, by far, almost 40,000 passengers flying out of the area. But we're capturing from the peninsula about 35%.
Where did he get this data? I find this very fascinating and it'd be interesting. to know.
So this is the same data that our consultant uses. And this is how it looks. When you say, if you say print it up for 30 miles, you won't really know where they're coming from, but you just type it in by zip code.
Okay.
And so it's just by asking for it differently, asking for it by zip code rather than by, and in our area, we can do that because we're not like Los Angeles where they have hundreds of zip codes, you know, when it be.
You can tell one zip code per city or.
Yes, so we're not dealing with that many zip codes in our area.
It'd be great to add Salinas and Santa Cruz and kind of see what our.
I just kept it on the peninsula.
Understand. Yeah.
But I guess the whole point of this, when we talk about leakage and you look at it, if you look at it from the standpoint where 3 airports against 1, you know, we're not, it looks like, I think it really paints a more negative picture than the reality really is when you look at us, how we compare to each individual airport. We're doing great against San Jose. We're doing great against Oakland. San Francisco, I mean, it is a large hub airport. They're doing over 10 million enplanements a year. there's only 2 large hub airports in all of California. We've got one less than 100 miles away from us. So it makes it tough. But just for your information to look at, I found the numbers interesting. And we have a hand raised by Director Leffel.
So Carl, I think along this line, what we have to understand is that there are airlines like Hawaiian that only go out of airports north of us. And there's a huge push when they have cheap flights and a lot of people go to Hawaii or they go to Mexico, that Oakland and San Francisco become extremely viable because you can drive up there and then get on a very inexpensive flight. One of the things, Mike, I'd love to see while you're working with your hospitality partners is that a couple of them offer a park and ride, because I've never seen us partner with anybody on that. But if you're coming in from Hollister or King City, that might be something that we should start looking at. And it's the same as our people do when they go to San Jose and park at the DoubleTree. So maybe we work something out with a couple of our airport partners and have it with the meal and have everything as a package.
That's not a bad idea. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea.
Because it's, you know, if you've got a 6 a.m. flight and you've got an hour and 15-minute drive to us, it would certainly make sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because this is throwing all the airlines in the mix. We're just looking at a zip codes. Now, what he did say there is a possibility to do if we were to rent this software, and it's about $7,000 a year, you can look at it specifically for airlines and catch the leakage per airline. And the reason I gave you all the raw data, because I found this interesting. Look at some of these airports. I mean, there's Fresno. So we have people with Monterey zip codes flying out of Santa Barbara, flying out of Fresno. Granted, it's not huge numbers, but I mean, this skews this leakage number that we look at. And if anything, this exercise for me has been, it's not as simple as it looks. It's a pretty complicated process.
Yeah, I had a conversation with our consultant about this, and the gentleman that you were talking to, Jeff, used to work for Mike.
Yes, he had great things to say about
yeah,
Mike.
great
He
things
said
to
he
say.
learned the industry from Mike. That's how long Mike's been around. I mean, he carries a lot of weight in this.
He does. But the data is good. It's solid. It is potentially useful for us. But we want to compare it to what Mike thinks is even better,
Yes.
more robust data from cell phone data.
And it's 2 different things. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
you're looking at bringing people in, which has a far more benefit to our economy
Yep.
than people flying out. But that being said, we want to be relevant in this because the directors come from this community. They're not
Right,
coming
yeah,
from visitors. So.
And that's part of the analysis that we'll do. If there's a need for both, we'll do that. If one can do everything that we need, we'll do that.
Yeah.
The advantage of the GPS cell phone data is it's irrespective of how you book your flight. So if you book your flight on Southwest, which is a big player in San Jose, because theirs is done, Southwest is not necessarily reflected in the zip code data because of how they sell their product. Mike would have to explain it to you better than I can, because I'm just learning this part of the data. But a carrier like Southwest, who doesn't use the normal GDS system, they have their own standalone system, is not necessarily reflected in the data that zip codes show. So in that respect, GPS data would be richer because we'd capture more of the passengers or more of the buyers. But I don't know yet whether we can break it down by carrier. Still working through those traps with Mike.
Mhm.
So can we tell off of GPS data whether person X flew on Southwest? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to find out. If there is need for both, we'll buy both.
Yeah.
$7,000 a year does not scare me,
Yeah.
if the data is good. But I
But
don't
it-
want
Mike,
to
are
buy
you, are
duplicate.
you saying that if I fly Southwest, that it's not in the numbers that the consultant gave Carl?
Yeah, that is Mike Bound's opinion that it does not reflect all. And Marianne, I had about a 3-minute conversation with him before we walked in and said, tell me about this data. How does it measure? And he was explaining it to me. I don't have all of the details, but if you fly on Southwest, that data, your activity is probably not covered in the zip code data.
Oh,
But conversely, if you fly on Southwest and we use GPS data, I don't know if we can tell whether you're flying on Southwest.
we just could.
So-
Well,
tell
that would
you
change
kind of-
that would change the numbers considerably for San
Absolutely.
Jose.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a work in progress. If there's need for both to get the full picture,
Mhm.
we'll buy both. But I don't know the answer to that yet.
Go ahead.
Very, very quick. Is this tracked by credit card? The
No.
zip code? How do
No.
they,
It's
so on
tracked by
the
booking.
ticket?
Yeah, it's tracked by
Tickets.
booking. And
Okay.
when you go online and you book,
You
your
put
zip
in your
code
ad-
is
okay.
there in your billing address. So they know where you're from. But Southwest doesn't use the typical, they're not participants in the typical system that American or United are in. They have their own standalone system. And Mike's not sure that that's captured in the data that Jeff provided.
Mhm.
But I can't tell you on the other side whether I can capture the rich data
Yeah.
that Jeff has provided you. So
Well, if anything, this is much more complicated than it than it appears on the surface.
Mhm.
But you're rest assured, your Air Service Committee and Mike Lapierre and Mike Bowen
Bound.
are working at this, and we will be bringing more information forward. Marianne, we're going to lose you in a few minutes, so I'm going to go out of order here and let you talk about nothing to report out on local jurisdiction. But can you go ahead and report about LAFCO, taxi, and special districts, please?
Local Agency Formation Commission. I am actually at the Cal LAFCO statewide conference as we speak. So I just attended a session on what LAFCO does and why. So I'll be back this afternoon and we have opening session at 1 o'clock, but there is no LAFCO meeting this month. LAFCO never meets in November, so the next meeting is the first part of December. And we will be hearing the annexation in Soledad. So that's coming up December. So I'll have more when I get that package and know exactly what it is. The special districts, we postponed the meeting because we had a very poor attendance scheduled, and we could not get one single elected official that we wanted to speak because they're all busy campaigning, and I guess none of us are big donors. So there you go. So we'll be the third Tuesday in November, and we'll have a good spokesperson. And there's no RTA meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Director Leffel before we lose her?
I will say this for special districts, the breakdown is with the governor's new announcement that we are out of the emergency situation as of February 27th. So there has already been one communication out to the special districts, but the hybrid Zoom meetings and the I'm going to call it circumvention of the Basic Brown Act, where you have to post a location outside of yours will be not allowed after February 27th. So for instance, what I'm doing right now, I would have had to post down in the lobby and be down in a public area to join you all in a meeting. So it's going to change. We're all going to go back to the old way of having meetings.
Well, you look very comfortable right now. We're all
Well,
in-
I am, but I have, at least I'm not sleeping.
Yeah. Anything else? Any questions for Director Leffel on any of those issues? Okay, none. Leasing, Director Sani, can you give us a report on leasing, please?
Sure. And I was thinking maybe we do that and then we could go to, well, you did almost all of it with Director Leffel for
Yep.
the others.
Leasing, and then the
Um,
other would be you on, is it you?
Yeah, I'm Ambig.
Ambeg, yes.
Yeah. So leasing, we discussed pretty much the car rental, which we've discussed as a full board today and approved. The other thing, we did do a couple confidential items, but that will likely come to the board next month as well. No, I think I'll leave it there unless want to add anything.
Any
Just
questions?
kind of an update.
Uh,
The things that might come to the board next month, are they regarding our rental of our properties?
Yes.
Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yes, yeah. But nothing was ready to come to the board.
Including a report on hangars and stuff,
Yeah.
that will be coming next month, most likely, right? Okay. Why don't you go ahead and do Ambeg, and then we'll turn it over to Director Sabo.
And I need to apologize. I can't do Ambig because I missed it.
Okay.
It wasn't in my calendar, so
Your
alternate is Bill, but he didn't know about it because I replied to go and it wasn't in my calendar. So I'm just a little, sometimes I have problems when I accept from Microsoft to Apple. It doesn't always come through, but so I dropped the ball on that one and my apologies.
No problem.
I will reach out and find out if
Yeah,
there was
find out if
anything
there's
big, but
anything that
absolutely.
concerns us.
Yeah.
If there's no questions, Director Sabo, can you fill us in on TAM?
TAMS isn't doing very much right now. They're mostly, most of the meeting is consumed with hearing legislative analysts report about measures at the state and federal level that they're supporting or not supporting, and none of that really affected the airport at all. Balance of they moved everything, as I mentioned before, they moved everything to the consent agenda. So everything is pretty much decided by the executive committee. And not too much goes before the full board. And as a result, a lot of the supervisors and elected officials, I mean, the mayors, are not showing up at the meeting. And so nothing other than they talk about safe streets for kids and, a bike paths and all that, but there's not really anything consequential for the airport. So not too much to report. But I use that as a way to give a pretty good commercial for the airport, report a new service that we're having, how our employments are doing. And I get questions back from folks that are attending the meeting to say, what's happening here, what's happening there. So it's a good way to communicate with the elected officials in the county. End of story.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director Sabo? Okay, that is, we will go ahead and adjourn to a closed session. I noticed our lunch arrived, so timing is perfect. Why don't we take a 10-minute recess, and at 1:05, we're back in closed session. And Director Leffel you'll be leaving us soon. Thank you for coming back. Okay. Welcome back. In 2:22, and when we were off at our closed session, our I'm going to repeat that. We have 100% attendance now. Director Leffels and Pick have rejoined the board. We have nothing to report out of closed session. We are returned to open session at 2:23. Pending items is the update to the governance manual. I did talk with Scott Huber. He has finished this. It was only out of kindness to Dave Ritchie that he didn't want him to deal with the questions that we would have, but we will be prepared to present this at the November board meeting and check that one off. So is there any wish for future agenda items? Open it up to the board.
Thank you.
I don't have an agenda item. I just want to recognize the new exhibit out, and I know we've got
Oh, thank you.
event on the 27th, Thursday at 5 p.m. and welcome anybody who may be listening out there, but for all of us as well at the board to
Yeah.
put it on our calendars. We were reminded last month we were given a flyer, but really a nice exhibit.
Nice exhibit, and it's usually a fun event. They serve hors d'oeuvres and wine at this. Gets a nice group of the community to come in and look at this. So yeah, I would encourage we all attend the meeting. Mary Ann, did you have anything for future agenda items?
No, I did not, Carl. Thank you.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, well, we're all in favor, yay?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye, and it is, we are adjourned at 2:25 PM on the 19th of October.
And you, sir.